Okay, no more now.
Welcome, everybody. Let's call the meeting of the Wellington Equestrian Preserve Committee to order. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, tonight is a workshop. We're in the workshop room. We do not have a public hearing. We do not have any quasi-judicial or any hearing, any issues to approve. And as we all know, we like this room because we can actually talk to each other. And that is the point of tonight. Rachel is going to be about half an hour late, and Christy's always pushing it to get from Boca to here, so she'll be here any minute. Do you have any, Mike, do you want to have any announcements before we dive into this plan of action? Because this whole meeting is about the plan of action.
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
I'd like you all to wish Bob Basehart a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Bob.
Happy birthday, Bob.
I don't know if he's watching or not, but I know he's taking the day off.
I bet he is. Yeah. I bet he is.
I told him I was going to do that to him tonight.
Well, happy birthday, Bob.
Yes. The plan of action that you're going to discuss tonight is really something that, from a staff point of view, we have a whole list of timeline items that, can move a little bit. We put them in the report, and it was basically something that we had put together. Some of them have been completed and others are still working. But the work here that is going to need to be done to dive into some of these things is going to take some more staff time. So from my perspective and from Ryan's perspective, in order to prepare for your meetings and prepare you to have proper information as best we can provide it to you, we would like to get a list of things that are your priorities for this year, for the 2019 year. And recognizing that, you will have I assume you'll have some petitions coming forth that you'll have to discuss, and there'll be other things that will interrupt this schedule a little bit. But still, some of the things that we need to work on will take us as staff a little bit of time to get together and pull the information for you. So we would like to be able to meet your schedule and be considerate of your time so that you're productive here. So we would like to be able to provide you with that information in a timely manner. So having, even though, like I said, there's a timeline here, even though that's here, we think you might have some other priorities or things that you want to move around in the priority list, and that's fine by us. We just need to know about it, so we're prepared to do that. So with that, basically, I'd like to flip it back over to you, Jane.
Okay. So as a reminder, Bob, you've been with us for this is the third year. The current committee, with the exception of the new members, of course, put this together the last 2 years. Mike and the staff had worked on it prior to us convening, so he handed us a version of it, and then we spent 2 years on this. We approved it last March. It took a while to get through the council, in part because there's a lot of questions in this plan. It's not here's what we think, do ABC. It's here are the different things that we think. Not all of them necessarily agree, and here are some issues we have to keep tackling. And so it's a lot more gray than I think everybody would love. But that's the nature of the preserve and the horse industry and the evolution of the venues and our town. So, so all that being said, we have this now document that's approved. We're set to act on it. But as things evolve, we may want to rearrange the timing. And also, I know we all want to be productive. We usually have a handful of hearing issues to come to us, and we are the frontline first look when it comes to land use issues in the preserve, and that's our first and most important job. But the second part is the more proactive part of what we do. And we're at a really nice place coming into this new year where we've got a plan approved, we've got a good committee, we don't have anything on our plate in the next month or 2 or 3 even, probably, hearing-wise. We've got some time to say, okay, what do we want to do proactively now that we've got the approval to run with some of these things. I may, if you don't mind, I may walk us back through this just to remind us all. And I've talked to some of you about what each of you personally might want to take up. I know there's some things more important to me, and there's probably things more important to each of you. And I thought maybe we'd have some time to go around the table and talk through that. But can we start with page 7, the goal? And I'll read it. Because the goal, believe it or not, took some work. And we changed it as we finished this plan. But it really addresses maybe the difficulty of this plan. The goal, quote, is, the goal of the plan is to protect and support Wellington as a world-class destination for the equestrian industry while balancing the unique equestrian lifestyles offered within Wellington. So there's a conflict right there. You know, do we want to support the venues because that supports the industry and that supports the community of the equestrian lifestyle, but then there's also the lifestyle, which is the trails and maybe the non-competitors and the farm lifestyle. So it's the growth of the venues and the industry versus the preservation of the preserve and the farmland and the equestrian amenities, which will always be a little bit of a juggling act. So right off the bat, we've got it's a balancing act, and it always will be, to preserve this industry here. If we go to the back of the book, page 52, those are the list of things that we wanted to address by timeline. And some of these, and a lot of it we've done, and let me walk through some of these things too, so we can sort of see where we are in January of 19. The economic impact study was July 2016. We commissioned it. It was finished last year, so that's done. The plan of action we finished. Review land development regulations. That's the zoning code. And as a reminder, Wellington has completely rewritten its zoning code, and we addressed the portions that had to do with the equestrian preserve. The largest part of the zoning code is section 6, has the preserve zoning. Is that coming back to us for approval?
We'll make sure that whatever we modify in it does come back, but we are in the heart of finishing that up at this point. We've got our first, probably from a SAS point of view, our first cut that we're reviewing internally, that we're working on. This is a lot of the regulations associated with revitalization and redevelopment of the village. You know, as we're getting closer to build out, we're starting to look at those kind of things. So we're addressing that, and that's taken us the most time to get through. So Ryan and I have been both working on the incentive programs and things like that, but that has nothing really to do with the equestrian preserve area. But if there's aren't any changes to 610 or 11, we'll let you know, and we'll bring that back to you as a package.
Do you mind sending 610 to the new members?
No, we can do that.
You all need to know it. It's the zoning for the preserve, and it has to do with lot sizes, which is the most important part of the farm area. Everything from lot sizes to trailers and parking and RVs and all of it. But yes, we'll get it to you all, because we'll see that one last time before it goes to the council. So, some other parts of the zoning code have already been approved by the council. We have a planning study on the list, which I'll come back to. The golf court ordinance also will come back to. Preserve Association. 7, 8, and 9 are all traffic related. Widen Lake Worth to 4 lanes. Make an improvement at South Shore and Pearson, and looking at traffic calming throughout the EPA. We're going to certainly talk about all those tonight. Keep in mind that all of those are somewhat contingent on improvements that have been committed to by Equestrian Sport Productions to, 1, improve Pearson and South Shore, and 2, to provide the extension south out of the horse show grounds to the new road that will connect to Lake Worth, and none of that's been done. So we may need to have that happen as we look at these at 7, 8, and 9.
Can I just interrupt there?
Sure.
As you say, as that gets to be improved, Took me 20-something minutes to get from my house to here today. And that light, which is different than the roads or whatever.
South Shore and
The
Pearson.
South Shore and Lake Worth.
Oh, really?
On the
Coming from the south?
going north on South Shore. 100% needs to be addressed with kind of, I know they're, what do you call them, plates on the ground or something for if traffic is there. They don't work. They need to, because there was a line from, again, this is heading north tonight from the light, South Shore and Lake Worth, back to South 40.
And then there's probably another backup at Pearson.
And then, well, no, actually, there was something wrong with that. I think there was, but this, now that there's traffic, and now that this is really the first year that you have that extension, it's just a disaster.
Well,
I turned around and ended up going like around and around and around, and like, it's awful.
I told you before the meeting that today, when I was coming north on South Shore. When I got to Lake Worth Road, I was the 9th car with a red light. And when the green light went, we couldn't move because from Lake Worth to Pearson was so blocked. So I had to wait for the next light. I was the 3rd car to go across, and then went across. But it is, and then when you get to Pearson, wide, 4-lane, and everything flies.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to
It's going to
this.
get worse with the horse show coming out the backside.
And the traffic from 50th Street and from Lake Worth Road, they all meet right there.
Does the engineering department look at the traffic timing, the light timing?
Yeah, I'll make a note to talk to Tom about it.
I mean, that was one of the things when I was coming here, when you were, when we kind of like, okay, come with prepared with things, and I had my issues, and this was not one of them, and then I'm sitting there and I'm like, this town is built on when it's not season, which is, obviously, right, but all of a sudden, it's like, when season hits, it's like, holy cow. It's like, it's just not.
Which is a good thing.
No,
Yes.
no, I don't mean it as
No, I know you don't, but we just.
it as a bad thing. I'm just saying that, like, you really feel the swell, and then you feel the overtaxing of, the intersections and the roads and the whatever. And as far back, I mean, you expect it maybe like in town, but you don't necessarily expect it out there because no one even lives out. I mean, I'm one of the few that actually lives on my farm. You know what I mean? So you kind of expect it early morning, but like not at 6 o'clock at night.
It's sort of, we've talked about this before. We live in a tourist state. It took me a half hour to get from Federal Highway to 95 today.
Wow.
Okay, half hour. Because it was 5:20 when I left my office, and you see what time I got here. So we live, and this is down in Boca, we live in a tourist town, so yes, we try to address the problems, but it's unfortunately, like you always say, be happy that they're here.
Right.
But, yes, the light timing stuff we need to address.
I just think it has to be a light time, not widening or this.
But it's sort of an unavoidable issue all over South Florida.
For sure.
Thursday evening's not a good evening to have this meeting because it took me 30 minutes to get past the food truck invasion.
Did you stop?
Because you stopped.
Annabelle, don't forget your mic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you got a good voice, better than mine, but we still need it.
But along those lines, when's that road into the horse show supposed to be completed?
Good question.
It was.
Okay. Thank you.
No, is it? I mean, there's no deadline and no.
I haven't seen anything coming through. I know that we approved a plat. There was some plat. I heard something come through on the plat side of it. I think we gave them the okay on a plat. Something we waived something on the plat. I'm kind of hearing a little things in the office, but I think that's supposed to get started. But I don't know that it's going to be this season for sure. In fact, it won't be. So
No, not just now starting.
right.
Well, I know, I mean, my kids take the golf cart from the farm to the horse show, and, they haven't even begun any kind of work on, from Lake Worth
North.
in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to keep coming through the list, and then we're going to come back around and tackle it one by one. Livestock waste removal will always be probably top of the list. work with surrounding municipalities and organizations on a regional solution for livestock waste, and that's twofold. That's addressing livestock waste, but also combining our group with Loxahatchee Groves, Loxahatchee, White Fences, Jupiter, Palm City, all the other surrounding equestrian organizations that are dealing with the same problems, or maybe there's some things we can work together on. The BMPs and the FDAX partnership is something we got done last year, but Mike, you're going to give us an update on that. Why don't you do that now, if you don't mind?
Well, yes, as you know, we have entered into an agreement with FDAX. We have been introducing...
The new people, can you just say what?
Oh, sorry. That's the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services.
And BMP is best management practices. Okay.
FDAX is based out of Okeechobee. They are more farm-friendly people, if I put it that way. They are obviously more in tune with agricultural needs, and so they're able to work with you all as farm operators to help you improve anything from manure disposal to your fertilizer uses and water quality issues and things like that. And they do have some grant programs that they can provide. I have not seen any of those grant programs be applicable to the Village of Wellington, however. That's just, I don't think we're fit into a lot of their categories for that, but nevertheless, they are out there. Excuse me. I am dealing with a little bit of a sinus issue right now, so I'm sorry for that. But we have been introducing farm owners as they've been coming in to the village for permitting process to either use the village's BMPs or go down the road of dealing with FDAX. I'm not aware of anybody at this point that's picked up on the FDAX scenario. However, we continue to make that introduction. And there are some farm owners out there right now that I think would qualify and fit very nicely into the FDAX program. So we'll continue to work with them on that.
My farm's with FDAX.
You're probably the one at this point that I know about. I'm not aware of any others. But we'll continue to work with them on it and see what we can do to make some things happen for them.
Do you mind also telling us about the gray water irrigation point?
Right now, the Utilities Department has begun the process of putting together a master plan program. They're just in the infancy stage of that, so they're just evaluating different locations right now. So I would imagine that probably over the next 6 to 9 months, there'll be some more information that we can pass along to you. But I will tell you that the Equestrian Preserve area, especially with the polo fields and the high usage of water in that particular area, that is one of the avenues that they're looking at where they can efficiently bring reuse water into that area and make it usable for the equestrians. But as you can imagine, the highest volume or highest users of reuse water would be probably the polo field areas. So that'll be one of the areas that they go to immediately.
Is there anything that this committee needs to do on that particular issue? Is it already?
No, I think what I'll do is I'll stay in touch with Shannon LaRock as the director of our utilities department. I'll keep Shannon apprised of the desire to keep you informed and then as she has something to offer, we'll offer her to come to the meeting and present to you.
Mike, is that gray water going to be enforced for us to use, or we will have the choice to continue with our wells?
I don't know how to answer that, Carlos. I don't know exactly what right now she's just evaluating property and the quantity that she has. We are expanding our wastewater treatment plant. There'll be some expansions to that, and there'll be some also expansions to our water plant. So there's a lot of utility work going on in the village right now. And Shannon's been doing a lot of good work associated with putting together the various reports and evaluations to determine that. So I know that we haven't been using as much of the reuse water that we're producing. That's another revenue source for her. So she'll be looking at trying to improve that revenue stream coming off of the reuse water. But I can't tell you whether it'll be mandated or not.
Because right now it only costs us Florida Power and Light to irrigate the field.
Well, this is, like he has a comprehensive program I know that she's been looking at. I mean, we're looking at reuse water as one component of how we generate and get water quantity into the village. So our wells that we use for drinking water, there's a balancing act with South Florida Water Management District where the water that we get for drinking water sources and the recharge systems that we use and how we use our wastewater is all part of that overall program. So she can balance and get credits for different things that go on, and that's one of those, and that's one of the avenues that's available to us is to reuse water.
And what's the latest on the federal mandates as far as phosphorus content? I thought we were sort of at the limit for that.
Well, it doesn't matter about the federal, but the state mandates that we are currently under with our permit with South Florida Water Management District is that the village cannot discharge more than 50 parts per billion on an average daily basis. That has not changed. We're not seeing, in the near future, we're not seeing that change, especially with the changes in the EPA and the different things that are going on the federal level. But there has been no major changes in the Lake Okeechobee Basin criteria or anything like that affect us.
So if it's state mandates, does it apply to to all of the state areas, the surrounding equestrian areas?
Excuse me, the village's permit is issued by the South Florida Water Management District for our stormwater discharge. I may have it a little bit wrong, but state mandates are coming down through the South Florida Water Management District, which are then governed by the federal rules and regulations for the Stormwater and Clean Water Act that you have, which is where we come back to the Loxetchee Wildlife Refuge. That is under federal guidelines. And so when the feds change their guidelines, that trickles down to the state, and then the state trickles those down to the water management districts, and then that comes into effect us.
But does it affect the surrounding equestrian areas as well?
Sure. Oh yeah.
Because I don't see the compliance outside of Wellington.
True. I'd give you that one.
That's an issue.
It is. Yeah, we, because as you may know, during drought conditions, we're also taking water in. So that's the other side of the coin, is when we're taking water in through the C51 basin, we're taking the water that's in the C51 back in. So it could be worse than what we have.
Probably is.
It probably is, yeah.
So what's the remedy for this?
That's a state issue, right?
Remedy in sense of water quality, water quantity.
Enforcement.
All of the above. I mean, at the end of the day, it's water quality, right? But if it's whether it starts with enforcement or starts with management or whatever,
yeah.
I mean that's why I ask.
Water quality is probably for our region, because of our proximity to the Loxetchee Wildlife Reserve area and Preserve, we are going to be looked at, and from our discharge levels. Our concern.
But I'm talking about the incoming, right? And drought conditions, as you just said, the incoming is going to be worse. So what's the management?
Well, the management of that is right now the way we have the system piped. Everything comes in it goes out to the north. It would come back in from the north, and then it would trickle down to the south end. So you can look at it and say our overall system, which is all the lakes and all the canals are all interconnected. So by the time we move everything southward, part of our solution is dilution, is by diluting. Right. So by diluting the water we have with what we're bringing in, by the time it gets to the south end, it may be a little bit cleaner, maybe. The problem is that when we are in a drought condition, mainly the usage of wells. Many of the big farms in the areas have wells to recharge their lakes or their basins for that. They're taking up water from the aquifers, so they're putting water on their fields. They're doing the things that they need to keep their grasses alive. And then when it starts to rain, all that phosphorus that's been building up now starts going back the other way. And so now we get hit with high discharge levels. So, we're kind of in a situation where we need to keep the water moving in.
Why is that not on a self-contained, when you talk about, they're keeping their fields or keeping their this or keeping their that, why isn't there some kind of, they're using that kind of level of fertilizers or whatever, why isn't it required to have some kind of self-containment so that that exactly doesn't happen?
They do.
They do, and it just
Every
still
farm,
does.
every farm, probably including yours, has a stormwater management plan
Right.
issued by the South Florida Water Management District, and you have a water quality requirement. It's just, we have a lot of, when you start discharging, especially after storm events, where, you know, a 3-day event has come in and now you're just flushing your system out. We're still getting all of those levels. I mean, there is quality requirements on every farm owner that's out there, water quality requirements, but at certain times of the year, those things get bypassed during flood conditions, and we get a lot of nutrients get loaded up into the canals. So
Who checks on this?
we do. We have a stormwater we have a whole monitoring program, sampling points all throughout the village. We monitor after every event. We monitor on sometimes they're weekly, daily, depending on the amount of rain that we're getting. They could be weekly during just drought events where we're not discharging any water. We're still taking water quality monitoring up, so we know what the levels are.
So the idea of self-containment is kind of a false reassurance.
Well, you got to remember the village itself, let's start with that. The village itself is a bathtub.
Florida's a bathtub.
Well, but the village is a bathtub, and there is a dike essentially around us. Whether you see it or not, there is a dike that goes all the way around the village of Wellington. So we only discharge our waters from whatever lands inside the village. That trickles down to whatever lands on the roads, whatever lands on your farm. You are maintaining that. We're maintaining the waters that land on the roadways, that go into our soil systems. All of that all ties together. Sure. So water quality is kind of like everybody's job. Whether you know it or not, you're really doing it. And so keeping those levels at the permitted levels is fine. But we were also farmland, so there is a residual left in the soils that we're dealing with as well.
And let me jump in here. You know, Wellington has got very strict guidelines about containing livestock waste. You know, we've got all those.
That's where I was going, but I was
Right.
going to hold my thought till we got to that.
Well, but you know, if you think about that, if you know, people complain about it, but that's why it's there, is to have all those concrete manure bins. But look around us when we get outside of Wellington borders, and it's
I was
on the
even talking
ground.
about that. I was talking about a new one that just popped up in our backyard.
Well, that was on a concrete pad, though.
Sure.
So-
Sure.
Another subject.
When it's flying around and
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah,
But that's
yeah.
kind of the point. It's like it's a false, assurance, so to speak.
Well, that's how all that goes together.
Yes.
And I'm still asking the question myself: is we go to all this trouble, and for very good reason, but our neighbors don't.
We're complying with our requirements.
Right. I mean, it's something to think about, because we're half the horses we figure out.
That's our guesstimate, yeah.
Yeah.
And how much? I mean, I know obviously waste from manure is a big percentage, and I'm not trying to diminish that, but just in the Equestrian Preserve, there also, I mean, I can think of 4 nurseries off the top of my head without doing too much thinking. How much runoff of fertilizers from maintaining the plants and whatever does that kind of compute into the overall level of kind of?
Well, some of the hot spots that we have in the village are at nursery discharges. You can assume that because they're using a lot of fertilizer, that there's
Sure.
those are some of our hot spots. And so we monitor a lot of that. You know, when we start to see a given discharge area becoming hot, we start to look at where is that coming from. And so we'll kind of move through the system and try to determine that. And yes, we know over the years, we've been doing this for a long time, so we kind of know exactly where things are happening in the system right now. And a lot of them are the nurseries. They've been here, they were here long before water quality requirements were in place.
Oh, I didn't mean it just like that. I was just
no.
trying to understand, like,
Yeah.
on a percentage basis, what percentage in terms of water quality comes from nurseries versus from horse waste?
I can't give,
Right.
and you know, no one, no, I shouldn't say no one, but very few people will police their paddocks, but then we're small. So I would imagine that maybe more people than I realize police their paddocks because they're very small in nature, so they probably do a good job of that. I'm just, there's no requirement for that to happen. Sure. And I think the other part of it is that the amount of fertilizer that's being used on fields and stuff like that is another big source of that. And I think, I'll go back to FDACS I'll give them a plug here for a minute. FDACS can work with landowners to help them curb the amount of phosphorus that they're using in their fertilizers for their fields by just doing some analysis for them. We know just by and I think Carlos is probably one of those folks, we've taken samples on various farms out here throughout the years. We look at our soils. We know the soil conditions of the village, and you really don't need a lot of phosphorus for our growing conditions.
If I could make a suggestion, that instead of, and when you talk about fields, obviously, the biggest fields are obviously polo fields, that it's not really the landowners that you should be discussing it with, it's with the field management guys, because the people that own them just are literally yield everything over to them, and as long as they have a nice field, they're happy.
Right, as long as it's green and lush.
As long as it's green and it doesn't tear up and, whatever, do what you have to do.
Right.
So if there's a way to have all that without using as many chemicals on the field, I think everybody would be happy because it cuts quite a bit of cost.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that we've been trying to push a little bit is the fact that, there's a significant cost savings here by just, utilizing proper methodologies for fertilization of your grasslands. So.
Well, Mike, the phosphorus content on the fertilizer has been put a restriction of to 2%.
2, correct.
And that's
or 0, right.
And that's on the Equestrian. But on the residents of Wellington, which is bigger than the Equestrian area, and the lots are smaller and they apply more fertilizer per acre than we do, is not. I mean, you can...
That's true, but also I will have to give some kudos to our suppliers like Home Depot and Lowe's and others that are out there. They're selling, 0 to 2% phosphorus as well, and so you really you're not buying a lot of fertilizer in the area now with high volumes of phosphates in it. So that's also been a reduction.
But I mean, the phosphorus applied to the fields has been controlled. There's no... Okay.
So that's, we've made a lot of progress, folks. I mean, I can show you days when the numbers were astronomical, and here we are meeting our requirements now. Our just got done, that's what I'm telling you. On an average daily basis, we meet that criteria.
Yeah.
It will change. It will change dramatically if we go to daily kind of discharge levels. We cannot meet that on a daily basis. So,
let's see. The last thing on the list that I have not mentioned yet is golf carts. And we can talk about that if somebody wants to. So, Rachel, we went through the list of basically the outline of the plan. Spent a lot of time talking about irrigation and water.
Gotcha.
53 down.
Okay.
Yes. So, now what would everybody like to do? Here it is, and here we are in January. Here we have this plan, we have this list. If you don't mind, let's go around the room and, what, of all of this, what is of particular interest to each of you? And let's talk about it as a group and come up with, what we actually want to do with this. I'm going to start with you because I'm going to go last.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have here summarized what I read over here. We have gone over some of the subjects, but if you don't mind,
Please.
I go over my notes.
And we can jump in at this if that's
With
why
everybody.
we're in a workshop today.
The first was community interdependence, and I think we are in a balancing act with Wellington. We need Wellington as a city to have a success with the horses, and Wellington as a city needs the horse business to succeed. And if we go back to 2006, when we had that equestrian flu epidemic, the horses didn't come here until January, and you can ask any merchant. That was their worst November and December since Wellington is here. So that first part of community interdependence, I think, is a balancing act.
Can I jump in on this topic?
Yes.
It dawned on me there's a project that I've not been successful getting any other group to tackle, and it may be because Wellington doesn't have a tourism office, and essentially, in some ways, this committee is the tourism board, right?
I was about to say there's nothing else.
But the tourists come here. Well, that's right, but they come here for the horses, and we're the horses. So when you think about it from that perspective, and when you think about it, the tourism is what supports this community, which is the horses, and we've got the economic impact study as a baseline for all of this. I haven't been able to find the numbers of how is the horse industry doing year to year, and not anecdotally, not, oh, it's been a busy year, oh, it's been a quiet year. I'm saying, how many horses this year? How many entries? What real estate doing?
Not easy to get?
You would think, but it's nobody. I can't get that, and I don't. It seems to me to be fairly obvious that Wellington needs a state of the equestrian industry report every year, even if it's just as basic as how many horses, how many entries, basic real estate sales. Because we need to know if it ever turns the other way.
Well, especially with Ocala opening.
That's right. But I don't know who can do this. I don't know,
I can tell you that we are full this year. All the barns are full.
More than full.
The rental properties are full.
16 teams. I mean, like...
Port Mayaca, which is an hour away, is, I think, full. Hope Sound is opening this year because there's opportunities. And I don't know if they're full or not because they don't have barns to rent, but they are starting to do practice polo. And in the polo line, we have more teams competing this year than last year. I think it's going to be a very successful season for the equestrians this year.
But
But
that's
see, on our
fantastic.
end, the barn people have been struggling to rent stalls in the dressage community.
And we have a horse show that's 4 days. The big opening horse show that's normally
like
4 days is 3.
Yeah.
Because it's not enough to fill it. The classes are terribly
which horse
small.
is that?
Dressage.
Dressage.
Very small this week.
One of the things that's interesting too, back to the community, is they used to have some community barns so that children in the community could get the experience of riding. And one of those programs shut down because they needed the barn rentals for dressage over at Global. And so some of those community events have been shut down completely, which is sad for the community.
I'm not sure if that was shut down for those reasons.
Well, but all of this is interesting conversation. But and I'm a numbers person. I would just like to see the numbers year to year.
Well, I think
how many horses,
entries would, obviously is trackable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can.
if we can get that information.
I think we could request that and get that, and I'm happy to kind of take the lead on that.
Okay.
I mean, at least I can, but those are entries. Those still aren't numbers of horses here, right? I can get entries. I'm pretty sure. I can get you number of teams playing high goal polo, right? I don't know how many are playing medium goal, and you can guesstimate, 8 to 10 horses per player, and you can get a number that way. But I think entries for sure is the most trackable number, for sure.
It'd be good if we could get it by venue, though. You're saying polo.
Well, yeah, but polo's not horse entries, right? So that would just be dressage and show jumping.
Okay, so you could pull that together.
I'm not saying I can. I can say I can take the lead.
Right, yeah.
I couldn't try.
Yeah, no. Point, I think it should be obtainable.
That should be the easiest.
Yeah.
Can the city help with that? The village, if we need it.
Polo, who could probably help with polo, and I can ask, is Tony Coppola, who's Taqueria, who's also the president of the USPA.
Yeah.
Great.
So he could probably help with that, and I'm going to see him this weekend. I can certainly plant that seed and see if he has any kind of way of tracking that.
You want the amount of horses competing in polo?
Yes, just, no, entry. If we can just, we can make this easy. If we can just get the number of entries on dressage, jumping, we got to catch the ridge too. And then,
I don't have it in there.
right, and then the entries in polo, that's a good place to start. Because again, if we can have that every year,
Yeah.
we can see what the trend is doing.
Okay.
Is there any way to do the same thing on real estate? To know, it's like our
The same to do in what?
real estate, are farm sales up or down? That's a big question.
Well, there's a lot of farms for sale this year.
Right, but we say that every year, and so, what's,
But like with the show jumping, if you went with the exhibitors list, that would tell you how many people were here
Yep.
each year,
yes,
which you won't have entries yet for this year, for the whole year, I wouldn't think.
that's right. We'd have to wait till the end of the year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could start, a lot of people go home at the end of the year. I mean, you could take a basic one of like the first couple of weeks in February, because people either show 2 weeks on, 1 week off. So if you took 2 weeks in February and you got the entry list, you'd have a pretty good representation of who's here.
Well, or we do this report in May every year.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah. But I'm just saying you don't need to track every week. If you took like 2 weeks in February, you'd pretty much capture what's going on here. You can present it any way you want in May and whatever, but like, I'm just, that's middle of
Last
season.
year's?
I
Yeah,
think
could we
last
start
year
with
should be
last year? Could
available.
we
Last
start with
year's
last
in-
year? Yes.
That's where,
So how do we do, okay, so I'm hearing consensus, we all like this idea. How do we get it done? Looking over here, some help.
You looking at this side of the table?
Yes, I am.
Can you create a city registry?
No, I mean, does the village have no interest? I mean, you would think that would
I'm
be
going
part
to
of
try
the
pulling this up
tourism
right now,
thing.
actually.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. It's the first thing you would do in the tourism office.
Yeah.
It's just something we would. It's not. That's what we're asking is not a big deal as far as this study is concerned, but it's the first step of acknowledging the equestrian industry as tourism for Wellington.
We'd be happy to work with you all in helping whatever lead you can give us to get to the people that need to have this information.
There's one, I gave you one. The other one was going to try to work on myself, but I can always give you a name.
I mean, I could ask Monica, I don't know.
I can ask Michael Stone if you like.
Yeah,
That's a
that'd
good
be,
idea.
Yeah, you'd be the perfect one to do that.
I was
That'd be
actually
really good.
I was actually just going to go on the website and kind of figure it out.
Let's get. We need. Let's start with last year.
Yeah.
Entry number 1, 2, like there's a horse list.
Google
So
Google
we're gonna-
certainly has this information.
So we're gonna start with 2018,
yeah.
and then we'll do it again.
And they must have that readily available. They must track it.
You know they have it, right? We just have to get
They
it.
have it.
2017. Sure they do.
You know they
They
do.
do.
You know they do.
But I did notice the first jumping class only had 12 entries this year.
What does it normally have?
I don't know, but every time I've been over there, every jumper class had about 50 horses.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, that was my point. I was just going to go look at the horse list and figure it out.
It's
I mean,
early.
because every week they post who's
Right.
entered.
No, let's just
Yeah.
we can make it easy. Let's do it annually and do it. So let's start with 18,
Yeah,
and then we'll do 19 when we get to the end of the season.
yeah.
Okay. So Bob's going to tackle ESP.
I will.
You're going to tackle.
Well, if he does ESP, then I don't have to
Oh, if you can do
anything.
ESP, and then we'll get polo from you
Yeah,
two.
we'll get the
somehow.
polo.
Okay. Super. Great.
It'd be good if we could also get some kind of national benchmark, perhaps from some of the associations, so we have a sense for,
Membership.
are we overdeveloped, for our piece of it, or underdeveloped by venue, overrepresented or under, where do we have opportunity for growth? Again, if we could find out at a national level for polo, for dressage, for hunter jumper.
Well, we're definitely the largest polo in the country.
Do you
That's
mind
an easy-
tackling
Yeah.
that?
I mean, we don't need to think too hard about that one.
Don't need to go anywhere.
Find it because you understand what you're asked after better than anybody else does. It's just 3 calls. It's USDF, USEF.
Well, I can do
Polo.
SDF because I have
We
half
can-
the board at my farm.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
Call Murray Kessler.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, everybody's here.
yeah. What is it exactly you want? Like, are entries up or
It would-
Membership.
Just
Membership.
membership? Oh, membership's.
Yeah, what's the composition by venue nationally? And also, what are the trends? So
Yeah,
where is it, and what are the growth rates or For any that are declining, decline rates.
And then the same token, Wellington.
Exactly. When we do ours, we want to
Right.
be able to
Compare the
Right.
two, yeah.
It'll be a
We
pretty
do it.
graph.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and this is going to start getting substantial after it's several years, after
Yeah.
we
Well,
do this a
I'm
few
sure
years. Yeah.
if they're going to have the data going back, so we can arguably go back to 2000. I mean, arguably we should go back to 2007 or 2008. You'll see the drop off in 9 and 10, and then where we are relative to that.
If we could get that, that'd
to
be
the
fantastic.
peak, to the last cycle peak.
I'd be thrilled with at least 3 years or 5 years, but.
But my point is they have it.
Bob, do your
If
best.
they have it, they might as well give us a data dump
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
and we can make it pretty.
That would be fantastic.
So,
That's good.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
online too.
All right.
Your time's up.
And I want to go because I went through the whole thing line by line. Okay. You said something about promoting the equestrian activities. One of the ways that we can promote is going to the schools and inviting the schools to come. Not the schools, like you go to first, second, third, fourth grade and give tickets to all the kids and say, you bring your mother, your father, your grandmother, your aunt, your dog to the horse show, to the dressage, to the jumper this weekend. I bet you half of them has never been south of Lake Worth Road or any of the games. And that's the way to get the people in Wellington involved, to get the younger generation going and taking the parents. And I think if we can come to the Wellington High School with 2 horses and a mallet and a stick and ball field and show them in their football field what it is and give tickets, they're going to come to the game.
And they've
And we
done
can
wooden
get,
horses too.
I'm sorry?
Wooden horses.
Oh, we can bring
No,
the wooden
real
horses for them.
Yeah,
But
that's what I mean.
they need to see a
Lessons on
horse
the-
moving.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And,
It's really
and
fun.
that's
They
a
also
way
realize
to,
It's actually really hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could we
Respect for it.
could we partner up with isn't there an education committee for the village?
Yes.
Could we partner with them to pull that off?
Yes.
And they've done that. They used to have a 4th grade field trip, at least for Binks Forest, to Polo Grounds. So every 4th grade class got to go to the polo games
right.
over at IPC. And then they have like a WEF night. So all the kids in the class in whatever grade get tickets and parking passes to WEF. I don't know, they didn't do it for dressage over at Global, but they did it for those 2 venues. And the kids loved it, and the kids got involved.
And
the
they
parents
get
got
involved. And if you let me continue, I continue. To be honest.
Well, let me ask you a question. Are you being serious about, or about saying that we're the tourism board of Wellington?
That's just me. I'm just one of 7 here.
No, okay, because I would just argue, and you may agree with me, that if we do believe that we are the tourism board of Wellington, I would argue that, for example, like this year, you will probably have the best polo you've had
In years.
decades.
Yes.
And probably the best outside of Argentina. 16 teams, all bringing their Argentine Open 40-goal horses to compete for $1 million.
And is that IPC?
It's at IPC, and it starts February 13th. I would argue, I don't know if you want to put up, I don't know how much money we want to spend doing this or whatever. The USPA, in my opinion, has done a horrible job at advertising, because they're like, everybody knows. No, nobody knows.
Yeah, we didn't know.
Exactly. And if we would want to do kind of a campaign at the airport or or something that kind of highlights, or local television or something that highlights that these events are ongoing, and during the week they're free to the public. On Sunday it's obviously not, but that would just be one example that I would throw out if we really want to take advantage of that. And it doesn't have to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, during the week it's free.
Right.
So you just drive in and tailgate and have a good time. Welcome to Wellington.
On Sunday at Palm Beach Polo years ago, they would bring the wooden horse out in the middle of the field and,
Halftime.
and choose people out of the audience to hit from here to that wall
Oh, yeah?
and nobody could do it that hadn't played polo. And it was really a nice attraction, I thought.
So how would we get that? How do we? So the schools, we can send a recommendation or an invitation or show up at the education committee and
Why don't we
propose
get it on
that?
local TV?
Well, that's the school part. For the polo, how does this committee do what you were suggesting? Is what I'm after. I'm trying to take the
You have to work
idea
with the
to reality.
venues. I think you have to talk to the venues to see how to get tickets for each thing,
Well-
and then they give it to the schools.
Or you can go around them, the venue, in this case, and you could, I could put you in touch with one of the governors of the USPA and, again, Tony Capola will gladly do it and give you all the information you wanted.
You're looking at me, and we don't. The problem is we don't have a staff. We have a planning staff.
We're
We don't have a
staff.
tourism staff.
That would be you.
And I'm not a tourism staff
Right.
either. So.
No, but the only day that you are charged an entry in the polo is Sunday at 3. The school kids can come to the games on Saturday free and do a tailgate. We can even
Sometimes
get
the games are at 4 o'clock, after school, they
or they
can
can
come
come
during the
at 4
week.
o'clock after school, and maybe we can talk to the school and say, can you give a school bus to the kids to go and bring them back to school? If the parents can pick them up here at 6,
So
something like that. I don't know.
I'll go with you. Do some collection of us want to go meet with the?
I'd be happy to go to the
Equestrian
schools
board?
and bring a couple of players with me. I mean, a trailer
Okay, we
with the
got
horses.
first. Let's go to the village education committee.
Your son knows everything.
Yeah, I mean, we can do it with
Carlucci, his son's now the director of the USPA.
yeah.
But we got to get through the Wellington schools, so we got to go to the.
We can go
education
through the
committee.
USPA to the Wellington schools. Yeah,
Okay. Will you help us?
I didn't want to say that. You
We're
said it.
going. going to the education.
Throwing you under the bus after you gave me all this stuff.
Education committee
Okay.
information.
All right. Great. Okay.
But
You're
I
not
think when
done.
you go to the education committee, you need to have kind of the program that you're proposing.
Yeah.
So if
We'll
it's
talk.
Saturday and,
We did it about, my
whatever.
younger son was in the Wellington Christian School, and we did it maybe 15 years ago. We brought a truck and trailer to their soccer field, and the whole school came out and saw it. They hit the ball a couple of times, and like you did, we bring smaller mallets for them to walk trying to hit the ball, because we didn't have the wooden horse. But they all were happy, and some of them never seen a horse, and they live in Wellington.
Yeah.
It's
Okay, we're going.
okay. I think
Okay.
that's a way to get Wellington excited with the polo, and don't complain if we create flies or if we have more traffic or nothing like that,
Okay.
because they will accept the tourism.
Okay.
Okay.
We're just starting on your list. I know. You have more, right?
Me? Yeah, I'm on
Line three.
line 5. Okay, Mike, the economic impact study that was supposed to finish in 2018, that's the one you said that it hasn't been finished yet?
Sorry, the housing and economic study?
The
It
economic
is now done.
impact
Yeah.
study that was to be finished in 2018, it has,
We have it in our office. We're reviewing the final pieces right now.
okay. And that was done by an outside company?
Was done by Florida International
Okay.
University.
My opinion is that if we're going to do an impact study in the future, it'll be done by inside people, not people from the outside that don't know the area. It's a lot easier for Ryan and I and Annabelle to go out and do a study. We know the area, than to bring people from the university that, they probably use it as a case study to do the study here. I remember when we first analyzed the studies that they weren't as complete as we thought they would be. Okay, so I'm not too happy with bringing people from outside to do the studies here, if we can get local people to do it.
Okay.
Okay. I would like, you mentioned here about the interpretation of Florida Statute 604. That's the agricultural exemption. And I am I'm in favor of sticking to the court's interpretation, not to try to get Wellington out of the court interpretation. Do you understand?
Yeah, I don't know why we would change. I
Well,
mean, whatever the courts decide, that's what we're following. That's our,
right, but we had a meeting before that we were going to try to get Wellington separated from that, and I don't know if that's...
that would take the only way to overrule the court area is at this point on 604.5 would be to go to the legislature.
Well, that's what he's
Okay.
talking about.
I don't think we're doing that.
Okay, good.
No.
The widening of Lake Worth Road from South Shore to 120th. I don't see, if you have asked me this a couple of years ago, I said, no, don't touch it. But the traffic that we have now from South Shore to 120th is like a bottleneck, and all of a sudden you widen and go, and the same when you come back, and the same from Lake Worth to Pearson is a bottleneck, and we were commenting about that when we arrived early today. So I'm in favor of, 4-lane 120th to South Shore on Lake Worth, and from Lake Worth to Pearson.
Okay.
The expansion of Pearson, and the horse crossing on Pearson. We always say we have to solve the problem, we got to be safety. Why don't we use, when you go to a railroad and a train is coming, the lower, the arms?
You'll scare the horses. They're show jumpers, not polo ponies.
Okay. But the system that we're using, to me, is fine.
They're gonna eat me.
The system that you push the button, the lights will change. We haven't had an accident, and everybody respect when the horses are crossing. Nobody's saying, come on, hurry up. Everybody respecting. So I don't see a problem with continuing using the existing system that we have.
Okay.
There was talk of, I think, putting rubber mats down or something across one side, along the south side crossing.
Yeah.
Across South Shore?
Yeah.
I know we've done rubber mats and keeping them.
I mean, I don't think
In
they're
place
necessary, but
is
I
a
know
challenge.
that was a talk. Yeah.
Remember, they don't run across, they walk across, so there's no problem. Now, this is
Get spooked.
I'm sorry?
Unless they get spooked, and that's when it's dangerous.
Right,
When it's
but
dangerous.
we have, so far, it has been,
Right.
okay. The expansion of Pearson to Stribling Way is not in here, but that's a narrow road. And I know that there are issues with one of the property owners, but we can counter level the canal and put the road on top of the canal without disturbing the canal flow. If we needed to expand Pearson, you can go on top of the canal. The golf cart issue, every year we talk about it, and there's no solution to the golf cart issue. We're going to have, even if you put no more than 2 golf carts at the time, there's going to be 2 golf carts at a time, or there's going to be 3. I would just leave it the way it is, and we live with it. We got golf carts going back and forth. They are part of the equestrians. The equestrians are the ones using the golf carts, and not the students going to school. Maybe your kid.
They're going to the show. They're the
Okay.
equestrian. But I would argue that, I was actually thinking about that issue, and call me crazy.
Yeah, no, let's talk about this.
I think that there should be some kind of bonus for using golf carts. A, it's taking cars off the road. B, it's better for the environment, particularly since so many are electric. They're all, the majority of the golf carts that I've seen are road safe. So, and even if and the horses know them to go on the bridle paths. So so they all go on the bridle paths. So bizarrely, I think it's better to have that than all these cars going everywhere.
So I'm in favor of leaving the golf carts alone.
Well, let's talk about golf carts while we're here. Can we talk about golf carts?
Yes.
What's everybody else thinks about golf carts? Because it's something Mike brings up. Do we want to tackle this and try to make it better, or just leave it alone?
What's the version of what does it mean to quote unquote make it better?
What's the issue?
Well, yes, exactly.
All right, let's talk.
The issue used to be underage kids on it, right? And then, I don't know, from golf carts, you go to the little motorcycles.
scooters.
That's not a golf cart.
Yeah.
I know, but that comes with the golf cart problem for transportation.
Right.
But most of the golf carts back then weren't street legal. And I don't know how many have become street legal. Do we have a number on that?
No,
No,
we don't.
we don't know.
And they don't register them. I
What
just know
kind
that
of
they're street
complaints do you
legal, they're
get
just not
about golf
registered.
carts?
Well, since the village, so this story begins with, for every action, there's a reaction. So the action was, we don't want golf carts on the pathways. This is years ago.
Horse
Yeah.
pathways.
Yeah.
On the bridle paths. So the village and this Equestrian Preserve Committee, not you, but this Equestrian Preserve Committee agreed to put in the bollards that you see all around the village to allow only the
Horse
horses to
traffic.
go through the bollards. So with that, the equestrians still want to get around. So the reaction is the scooters, because now the scooters can go everywhere that a horse can go.
Right.
And so, as we've been dealing with for this, and
Can
I've
I
been-
interrupt you for a
Yes,
quick
you can.
question? Who didn't want the golf carts on the pathways? Was that a complaint from the equestrians themselves, or was that just something that the committee decided?
Can I answer that?
Yes, please.
I think the problem back then, and I don't believe I was in on that vote, I think that was before my time, but I believe the big problem was the four-wheelers roaring up and down yeah. And they
okay.
had to stop the four-wheelers, and that wiped out the golf carts.
Okay, understood. But was it but still, were the actual equestrians the one complaining?
Yes.
Yes.
It was the okay,
Yeah,
okay.
because the four-wheelers would scare them
Yeah,
off.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because
It
they
didn't
go
come
all
from the
around the golf
committee.
car, the golf carts go all around the show, that it's like, that.
Horses
like,
are familiar with them.
Right, yeah,
Well,
okay.
but Mike raises a great point, is you put the bollards up, now we have these scooters which are super loud, and
Very
they're
worse.
even
And they're
worse than an
worse.
ATV
They're
coming
so
up behind a
worse.
horse.
Yeah.
So does it make sense to take the bollards back down and have a rule that there's no ATVs, but encourage the golf carts?
But who's going to enforce it?
Well, and I think that's one of the challenges is enforcement. Every year since I've been here, we've encountered at least one person who decides that they don't have
They
to
don't,
live with the rules and regulations. And then I have to spend a week or two chasing this person down through the sheriff's office trying to catch them. And then when we do catch them, it's like, oh, okay, and then it's right for the rest. But it takes us a lot of time to go through to do that. And I think that, like I said, for every action, there's a reaction. So I know that Carlos has talked about this many times, and it appears as though, and mainly in the southern portion, a lot of the bridle paths are the roadways. I mean, if you think about it, many of what we have down there for bridle paths are actually the roadways. So the golf carts, the cars, the horses are all in those areas. It's the northern portion, and as you get closer and closer to the showgrounds, that's where the concentration is. In the trail study that we did here a few years ago, we actually put up cameras and we counted horses on certain locations within the village. I think the yellow trail, which is along Pearson Road, had actually more golf carts using it than horses.
I probably,
It's all from
'Cause I
the
didn't-
old polo
I
barn
didn't-
all the way,
right.
that's the people. who
Prohibit
use
the
it.
horses from going.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that particular pathway is
Yeah.
just back and forth all day long. I mean, a trip is a trip, so we counted the number of trips, and I think we had much more golf cart traffic on that particular pathway than we did. And I have asked a number of times at our engineering department, look at Pearson Road to allow golf carts to be put on it, and the answer is absolutely not. There is too much truck and trailer traffic to allow a golf cart on that roadway, even
I
though.
agree with that.
Even though it is at a speed limit that would allow for it to happen, but
I would
there's
agree
too
with that.
much.
No, I think the issue is if they're going to go, I don't feel, personally, I don't feel comfortable knowing that the age, I believe, is 14 and up. I don't feel comfortable with any 14-year-old on a road with a golf cart, period, the end. I would never change that rule that they would be allowed on the road. That said, there's such familiarity with driving them around horses and whatnot, that I do feel comfortable having them go on the bridle paths, because everybody in those golf carts know that the horses have right of way. That's my.
what about the
personal-
issue about the bollards, and do we need to do anything about these loud scooters?
There again.
Problem is, wasn't there something about that we have the signs up that no motor vehicles are allowed on the canals, but we really don't have the jurisdiction. I remember something at one of the meetings about.
Remember the same.
Remember that? Like, we don't really have, we just put those signs up hoping they won't go on it, but we really
No
can't.
motor vehicles are allowed.
Yeah, but we,
enforce it.
but we
On what?
really can't.
I think it's probably more the ability to enforce it. I mean, just like I told you, I will get a complaint about a
Right, yeah, well,
specific
yeah.
rider in a specific location. It will take me, with the sheriff's department, it'll take them a week to maybe 2 weeks to find
Right.
this person.
But I remember something
mean,
at one
to-
meeting that we actually legally didn't have the right to,
Correct.
but we put the sign up anyway. Remember that?
Well,
I do remember that meeting.
Yeah.
I don't, but if we have if they have the legal right to enforce it, then there's places that are bad, like along the north
By
side
the
of
time the
Palm
sheriff
Beach
got
Point.
there, they were
Yeah,
already gone.
no, it's always
so-
that.
No, but you could put somebody out there and easily catch them, because
Okay,
it's
so I
constant.
catch one, but then
No,
I
you
still got
catch a
10 more
bunch.
to go.
You
so,
catch them all.
Yeah.
Right.
You catch them all. That's a bad place.
Kind of a roundabout question to this is, did the Lake Worth entrance to WEF ever come to fruition?
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
I
The
really missed
extension
that.
did, but not, he hasn't started
Okay.
building the back entry, and that was a whole
Gotcha.
discussion we had before you
Because-
came, which was, when is that due?
Because if that's due, I think the traffic issue and the golf cart issue subsequently, you'd have a
Well,
lot more room to go with the golf
Yes, and then you're gonna
carts.
have a whole lake, the whole thing of the lake, that particular light issue, because that's not set up right
Right.
now for all that traffic.
Right, and the golf carts would have more room to go because it wouldn't be as
That's true.
traffic heavy. So even if they needed to drive street legal golf carts on the road, it wouldn't be as heavy.
The problem is that the people who are driving
Are young.
No, the people who are driving golf carts on Pearson, they're going to one of two places. They don't come out the back, because there's not a lot of people that are using golf carts to go to the farms, and it's the grooms, and they're using cars. What's happening is that they live in Palm Beach Polo, so they're taking the golf cart to Palm Beach Polo instead of driving the kids, and then they're at the old, where Palm Beach Equine is, and the Charlie Moorcrofts, and all those old polo stables.
Right.
It's a straight shot and so whatever. So that opening of the back, you can still go out in the back. Like, we go out the back every time because we live back there. That's not going to change the golf cart flow, because people still go back and forth with the golf carts there. This is, the majority of the traffic is like, I'm not going to take my car because I have to pay $100 for a parking pass. So I'm going to take the golf cart, and I'm going to use the roadway and whatever, or my horses are at Palm Beach, Palm Beach Equine, so to speak, and it's
Right.
just a straight.
Plus Olive Saddle Trail.
And honestly, the golf
Right.
carts increased with the cost of the parking pass.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
It's a direct correlation. Every action, there's a positive or negative reaction.
Okay, so let's wrapping up the golf cart conversation. Do we want to take any action on the golf cart issue?
I say no.
I say no.
I say no.
Keep the golf cart.
Okay, no golf cart. Just take it off our list for the moment. We're working on a 2019 list. What are we going to tackle? So golf carts is not on it.
You're on
Carlos,
line 6.
continue,
Can I continue?
please.
You're going to get all of us done in one.
You still
Okay,
have half of your 3 minutes left.
Mike, we were talking about the water quality, and here you're telling us that we may get gray water. Is the
Price.
water filtering system, the new water plant was approved? We're spending $35 million to do a new water plant. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, for drinking water.
For drinking water?
Right, for drinking
Okay. But we are 95% built up, like you say in the report. So why are we spending $35 million on a new water
Our
plant?
utility service area is not just the boundaries of Wellington. It goes out beyond the boundaries of Wellington.
So we sell water outside of
We
Wellington?
sell water outside. So as an example, Wycliffe. We sell water to Wycliffe, but they're not in the village of Wellington.
Okay, what I'm trying to go is, I am afraid that you're going to force us to use the gray water in 2 or 3 years for irrigation of our fields.
Okay?
And if that's the case, I know that I spend between $300 and $500 a month on Florida Power and Light just on the electric pump for the polo field. So if you give us gray water, is it going to come with pressure that all I got to do is open the hose and the sprinklers are going to pop up, or am I going to have to put a pump in your line? Or, I mean, why after 40 years of us running our barns with well water and us having to find our own solutions to cleaning the water, like reverse osmosis, why now, if I wanted to build my house, you pushing me to get city water? Or if not, I don't get the final permit to build the house. And then it's the same is going to be with the gray water. You're going to push us to use gray water. If the water plant, the new 35 million that we spend on the water plant is not only for Wellington, it's to export and sell water. That's fine, but why? I just don't want you to force us to use the gray water. Because first, you're going to have the expense of bringing the pipes to every property. And then there's not that many polo fields. I mean, there's a polo field here, and like on my same block, I have a polo field, and South 40 has a polo field. So we are in the two corners of a quarter of a section. If you go to the section from 130 to 125th, there's not a polo. There's two polo fields there. Gansey's polo field. And if you go to the north, there's another one. So the polo fields are not close enough that you say, I'm going to run the pipe here and you guys pick up from here. You're going to have to come through every street. So
I'm not going to debate because I'm
no. What I'm saying is I'm going to have to assume that we're going to pay for all those lines.
This question belongs to the Utilities Department, and she's doing her study and she's doing her work, and I will ask her to come here when she's prepared to do it.
Right, but
I will also.
But you put it here.
I will also tell you that I've been here, and you've been here too, where there has actually been dry canals and there's been no water to irrigate anything.
Correct.
So on the flip side of that is that when you need water and it's not available, the only water that is available or will be available will be reused water.
Okay.
So that's an option that is
It's an
available.
option.
That's an option today to you available, but there's also the Water Management District requirements as well. And so we're weighing all those things out as we go through this process.
Okay, but
Well, the flip side is, Carlos, is that what I would argue is that you're not wrong, but what should be offered is some kind of material economic savings to those people who decide to put them in, because for the environmental and whatever reasons, right? I mean, and there may be some people that would say, sure, for X percentage off of, I don't know, whatever bill or this or that, for that, to use, reused water, maybe worth it. But I think there has to be some kind of, incentivized plan to have people want to. Otherwise, I 100% agree with you. Well, I don't want to pay for something I don't even have a choice over.
right, and it's not that it's going to be better or worse. It's going to be reused water that is not good enough for you to drink.
Right.
That's why you're sending it to us. So if it's not good enough for you to drink, the horses are going to be drinking it, because if the water comes, then all the pipes that go to all the paddocks are going to be with that water.
So we need to hear from Shannon LaRock.
I'd like to kick this can down the road a little bit, because I don't think we're prepared to talk about it.
Right.
I am not prepared to talk,
Nobody
and I
knows
won't,
what's
because that's not my subject.
But you had it here, and I wanted to bring it up.
That's fine.
That I'm not in favor of obtaining gray water. Okay.
Okay.
Now, horse sports and tourism. You say here, do we want smaller venues? I think that yes, smaller venues are welcome, and the smaller venues are going to bring us to higher venues. You got to go to kindergarten before you go to 5th grade, before you go to high school. So smaller venues are welcome. And another venue that is welcome is different question activities like vaulting. Vaulting is something that little kids can do, and it can be done on a small farm, and they can have camps from 4 to 6 in the afternoon for the school people to do vaulting. And it's just like taking somebody to the gym or to ballet.
What is vaulting?
Vaulting is like you're in the circus that they put the horse going around and you come, you jump, you get in the back of the horse.
You do gymnastics
flip,
on the back
you-
of a horse.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Teach that to the kids.
It's a
My
big-
kids
big
took it
sport.
when they were young, and they love it.
Isn't it, it's the Olympics?
No, but it's
at the
a World Equestrian
Yeah, the
Games.
World
Yeah,
Equestrian Games, they had it.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
And it's very safe, and it's horse friendly.
Teams as well as single, and it's cool.
Yeah, it's quite a big
That's
deal.
cool,
Yeah.
I would never do it, but
Yeah. And the horses are saints.
Yeah,
the
the
horses
horses
that you
are-
put there are
around.
like.
sort of drafty, real safe, just sort of.
Then, continuing on the book, you said.
You could also think about Western, I mean, as you talk
Yeah.
about venues.
Yeah,
Yes.
the
Right.
Western vaulting. We don't have
Passos.
too many here, but the Paso Fino horses are also something like that. But we need to have something from April 30th through September 1st. You know, most of the equestrians leave at the end of, May 1st. Everybody's gone. Well, not everybody, but 75% of the horses are gone.
But even during season,
During the season, you can have vaulting.
like
You-
Western,
Yeah, Western,
or whatever the other venues that we might be missing are.
correct.
Yeah, good.
Then you said, what can we do? What can be done to protect polo from development pressure? I don't know what you can do to protect polo from development pressure. It happened in Boca Raton. They sold the polo because the whole area was being developed around it. Gulfstream, you saw it. 2 years ago, we had, 6 polo fields over there, and now there are a bunch of apartments. So I look at it and I said, it's a shame that we lost this right here.
Wait,
But-
before you go, though.
Single.
What can we do
wait,
to protect the polo? I'm sorry? I'm sorry, Jimmy.
One of the answers is the zoning code. The protecting the large size lots. If right now the southern part of the preserve is 10 acre minimum,
Yes.
and we held to that because there was some conversation about that making that smaller because we had some non-conforming lots that were smaller, and this committee absolutely said absolutely not. It's got to be held at 10 acre smallest, and that is the biggest thing we can do to prevent development.
Right,
But a
on the-
polo field is bigger.
Yeah,
On
and,
the-
and keep polo valuable, like what you said, you're having a record year, keeping that interest and doing all you can to keep the venues happy.
South of Lake Worth Road, there's no vacant land. There's an 120th, there's 30 acres that belong to the school district.
Right.
That would be great for making 2 polo fields. But there's no vacant land in Wellington, or you can go to Wellington Preserve.
John Malone's property next to mine is 100
On Malone's
acres.
property that has that big lake in the
Yeah,
middle.
14
You can
acres
fit
lake.
1 polo field, but there's 80 acres.
There's a nursery that's for sale.
Nursery. Oh, yeah, full of manure. I mean, what can we do to take pressure from selling the polo fields is that we got to control the development. No commercial development in the preserve, as it was voted before. No floating zones in the preserve. And give an incentive to the property owners that have large parcels. What can an incentive be? And I would like to see, like, when you buy your property in the Equestrian Preserve, if you are paying $1,000 per 5 acre parcel that is on agricultural, keep it that way. Keep the tax basis as the year that you bought it, and then when you sell it, the tax basis will go up to the year, whatever value is at that time. But I remember my property, the first year I paid $500 per 5 acres. Now I'm paying $3,500 per 5 acres, and I got the agricultural exemption.
One thing I'd like to add that supports that argument is that I had worked on putting together a not-for-profit for the benefit of Wellington, which is when I learned that Wellington is really a transient place and nobody really cares. But the point of what I tried to do is I started up, did all the legal work, literally started a not-for-profit. It was called WOLF, which stands for Wellington Open Land Foundation. and we started trying to raise $30 million and or land donations, because under the study, and I can bring the study here, I mean, I have a 30-page slide presentation that I put together. Under that, Wellington has 1.9% open land to total land versus most other areas, either in Florida or areas like Wellington around the country, which are anywhere from starting at over 5% going up to 20%. So it's a very depressing statistic, and the reality is that we kind of feel that in the preserve that, oh, well, maybe we're protected because of these large lots and everything else. But the reality is it's not open land, because as we've seen now with the corner of Lake Worth and South Shore, that new, 100 acres that the dressage person is building, it's not open anymore. You have, it used to be a bunch of trees and this and that, and I understand it's beautiful. I'm not denying that it's not beautiful, but it's, barns and rings and structures, and it's far from open. And so if we really want to preserve our open land, I think it's not necessarily an equestrian preserve issue. I think it's a Wellington issue. I think it's the all the people that appointed us issue that, but it completely goes to Carlos's point, is that we think we have open land because of these 10-acre zoning. There's no open land here. And that's a problem.
The existing polo fields are the ones that are there right now, and that's it.
Well, let me distinguish, because you're talking about open land, and then we're talking farmland.
But we're trying to preserve the openness of what there is, and his point is that, well, we have to incentivize those to keep it truly open. And my point is just kind of referring to the fact that Wellington really, despite we thinking that we have all this beautiful land, none of it is truly open, because it can be built on under farm, whatever, anytime we want. Sell it as a 10-acre parcel. I can still build on it.
Well, this is just my take on it, but my take on it is that it would be dreaming to think we're going to keep the land open and undeveloped, but we do want to keep it only to be developed as farm property.
Or you could argue that based on the statistics that I could give you, that Wellington itself, within their budget, should consider buying land in the preserve and keeping it open.
For what purpose?
Beauty, park, recreational use, anything like that.
The town already has more parks than...
1.9% open land to total land versus...
Not that, but community parks.
I'm including that. I'm including all of that.
But we also are very unique. There's no other place in the world like Wellington, so those statistics are hard to compare, because we're in a totally different situation than like
North Salem, Millbrook.
Yeah,
I can name 20 places like this.
But how do you go? We cannot go back and rezone, or the town cannot go back and rezone this. I mean, you're right. They would have to buy the land.
It's not about rezoning. It's about a community coming together on a charitable basis. As I said, these would all have been, tax deductible, foundational, like whatever you want to look at it, ways of, and it's about changing a mindset of the people who are here. But as I said, the hardship that we came into when this was started, because everybody's like, yeah, this is going to be easy, and look at the demographic you have here. And that's when, as I said, I learned that Wellington is a very transient place, and people are like, yeah, I'm only there 3 months of the year, I don't really care. But in all of that, I just say it because I learned a lot about how Wellington compares to, and I picked places that are exactly like Wellington to compare it to.
But they are. Like Millbrook is full of farms that people fox hunt across. That's completely different than this place.
North Salem?
Is it full of 4 or 5 horse show venues and multiple neighborhoods, or two
horse show venues, and the majority of the people there are have nothing to do with horses. I mean, I have a list. I mean, I have 15 names on that, all across the country, that are horses, or even arguably nothing to do with horses, but that still have, an open land policy.
Well, I agree with you. We don't have open land.
Right.
No.
So I think what we want to preserve is agricultural land, farms. And that's
we
not,
can.
and that's not going to be easy. And zoning is a big part of that. Because you can't put a housing development on a piece of property that's zoned for the smallest lot is 10 acres.
I can see this, or hear the screams from all the other people in town when they start buying up land for that kind of money, if the town were to do it. I just don't think they could.
I mean, the largest lot and most beautiful lot they have is over by Flying Cow, right? I mean, and everybody,
Yeah.
The MacArthur property is for sale, it's
It's for
vacant.
sale?
It's
It's for sale?
Well, it was for sale last year.
No, this is a park.
Oh, no, you mean the what, the
Section
park, the water
24.
park?
That's a water reclamation preserve area. That's a whole engineering,
No, I'm
engineered
talking
water
about
treatment
south of
plant.
that.
You know where the Orthwines go and they take the off of Flying Cow where Martha Mogren moved, and over behind there's this gorgeous preserve in there.
Wellington.
Yeah,
That's a water,
section
Yeah, the Wellington Preserve,
that's
yeah.
a water reclamation area. That's a
Yeah.
whole engineered plant. It looks beautiful and it's fantastic, and it's got a horse park and you could walking park and all that, but it's a whole water reclamation
Right, but
area.
I guess my point is when you say the community would be up in arms, it's like, well, it's the community uses it. It's gorgeous.
Will you
you know?
explain
Oh, yeah,
what
I
happens
love
there
it.
actually?
That was farmland. It was purchased by the village in conjunction with South Florida Water Management District as part of our reclamation plan for phosphorus reductions. And it's a stormwater treatment area. It's not a park, it's a stormwater treatment area.
But it's used as a park by the community.
But in typical Wellington fashion, we maintain it as a park. So
Right.
it has the bridle path on the perimeter of it, the interior walking paths and boardwalks and all that are in there. But it actually functions as a stormwater treatment area.
Okay,
Okay.
Carlos.
That property, I was going to get to that. It belongs to Wellington, and it's used to treat the water before we dump it back to
It's part of our mitigation plan, yes.
Okay, can we put a concrete slab on the west side so it doesn't bother anybody, and do the manure transfer station back there? It won't be in nobody's backyard.
We back up to the South Florida Water Management District stormwater treatment area.
Right. You have on this side, you have Flying Cow Road. Then you have 640 acres, right? A section of land?
The park, the stormwater treatment area is 350 acres,
How much?
350.
Okay, 350. Let's say that we take the back 50 acres to the west that goes to the South Florida Water Management, and put the concrete pad that we need to build for the manure, and do the manure transfer station back there. It won't have any resident around it.
But what I'm telling you is the rear property line of that stormwater treatment area of the Section 24,
Yeah,
and that's the west property line of Section 24,
yeah.
and the east property line of the stormwater treatment area for the South Florida Water are the same line.
Right.
There's no room back there.
Well, no, but you come into your property. I'm doing it in your property, not in their property.
Take away some of the,
So you want to take away some of the stormwater treatment area.
Right, to put the
Then we'd have to re-permit things. And that's, I'm saying, all that's been permitted through South Florida Water Management District.
Correct, okay.
That would mean we'd have to create some stormwater treatment whatever compensation we have to get rid
okay,
of.
then we go to the MacArthur property, which is south of that. Also, we can go to the back where the landing strip is, and put the
I know this is the Italian coming out in you, right?
and put the transfer station back there. There's no homes close to it. I
we
think
do- that's a
maybe
great i-
Glenn's
that's a great
house would
idea.
be
Can we do
closer,
that?
but not too close. But we can put it to the back, to
it's
the
the Flying
west side
Cow
of the
project that
MacArthur
came to
area.
us.
And that would be a solution for the manure.
And you can get that European company to build it.
We would need the owner to sell us that property, yes.
Okay?
It's for
I'll talk
sale.
to them tomorrow.
You're a real estate agent.
Okay.
No, wait, Carlos. Can we, as a committee, endorse that idea and send it to the council?
I will tell you, we've already tried the idea,
How so?
and we didn't get a positive response from the landowner.
You spoke to MacArthur?
Yes.
Okay. But that was last year when they had a plan to sell it.
No, it was actually prior to them trying to sell it.
Okay, but they had a contract on it and everything.
It's all
This was
fell through.
This was way before they had a contract.
Right.
So how
They
about
had
now?
nothing on it.
Now we got to go back to them because they are sour.
No, he's right. He's right. They just lost their deal.
This is the property that I'm talking about, right here.
That's a great idea. And that deal fell apart. They're going to need what they want to sell it.
This property right here. This whole triangle.
It's 150 acres.
This one?
Yes.
It's far away from everybody if we put it like this.
No interest in supporting that whatsoever.
This one right there.
Here's one.
This triangle.
Can you put the map that is on?
Yes, this triangle.
or
Yep,
the
that's right.
Map number 6 on the board?
Maps.
Ryan?
If we were to pursue that project, you would have strenuous objections. It'd be moving it from one backyard to another. There'd be strenuous
Right now, it's
objections
in there, it would be nobody's backyard.
from Palm Beach Point.
Palm Beach Point, he's saying.
And from Sunglade, because you'd be moving vehicles
canal.
right past those properties at a greater level than they're currently going past them.
Glenn,
I'm just
I
telling you.
I know you're a neighbor
facts.
of Palm Beach Point,
Right.
and I know that we have to solve the problem of the manure, one way or the other.
I don't disagree, and I would love to take that on.
Okay.
You can sign me up for it. We've so far, I think we've gotten to one person, right? And it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
It's on my list. No, I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying.
I had the list, and I didn't know how many
No, you're
minutes you're going to give me.
you're doing great, and we're talking issues. But there was a question: would we all support the proposal to have a manure transfer station on a piece of property that I'm familiar with, and I know, and that our neighborhood's familiar with? And I was just saying that's something that I know there would be a lot of objection to. However, if we're talking about the manure issue separate from manure transfer, so manure transfer to me is the issue of making it more economical to put it in the sugar fields, sugarcane fields, which we understand is going to get shut down sooner or later because of environmental issues. I would love to see us find a way, and this is something that Mike has a lot of expertise in, but I'd be happy to volunteer my time and energy to work with him to find a solution and work with a solution probably at the county level that would find a way to dispose of the manure and shavings that would be both cost effective and environmentally friendly.
So I'm going to chime in here on this one and say, well, right now it's in my backyard. And so I appreciate that not in my backyard. That said, I also recognize that everybody sitting around here creates the problem. So it's really easy to say in my backyard, but each one of us is creating this problem. So we kind of have to all individually and collectively own it. I understand the logic of having a transfer station. I understand that it cuts 30% out of the budgets and into the pockets of the haulers. I have not seen a reduction in my bill, I would like to point out, but I understand that it's there. I understand that all of these things are done on a best practices basis and by the town, requirements. I do not believe any of them are being followed. So, in my opinion, until we solve this issue collectively, all together, owning it, as well as solving it, as well as everybody agreeing that even though we don't want it in our backyard, we're willing to maybe have it in our backyard as long as it's done on a truly environmentally self-contained basis that doesn't interfere. It's not open to air. It's not open to, everything else. We dealt with this just in New York City, by the way, so I'm kind of very, very familiar. It was right next to a school sports fields. So what I would just like to say is, in my personal opinion, until we can all agree, including the council, on how this can be done, and I know that Mike will say, well, they can because it's agricultural land, and I have something on my phone that will say they can't, which I've passed along. I would say there should be no transfer stations in Wellington, and let the truckers haul it out to Sugar or wherever it will be, until at which point everybody can come to the table and sit down and either follow best practices or self-contain it so that it doesn't bother everybody, and or we can all agree that it should be moved there or wherever there is. So
I have no issue with that, just to be clear.
No, I wasn't directing that. I was just saying, I think we all have to own this. This is probably going to be, in my opinion, and now I think this is the first time after, we had a 2-hour meeting. I drove by there, I sat there, I watched it, whatever, and it was the first time after our meeting in August, which was like a workshop where I was like, okay, well, manure, that you're like, oh shit. This is real. Sorry. Yeah, that was, sorry. But it's real. And I think, in my opinion, you're going through your list, that's, after all of this and seeing it, but also not just seeing it as to what it is, but seeing it in the sense of like how it really also, I don't care how environmental or best practices, it's not environmentally friendly. It's not environmentally sound. It needs to be a self-contained, proper structure.
What's not environmentally friendly?
A manure transfer station, the way they're set up now. So I would argue that all of this should be shut down. And I read something, I can send it to everywhere. You can send it to everybody. The link I have from Pam Biondi's, she did a ruling on a nuisance law in Suwannee County and how the dairy farmers were using a different method of spreading the manure, and the town complained, and she highlighted that, in fact, that these laws are put into place to protect farming, which everybody understands, and that usually it's the housing developments that come after the fact, and therefore they can't then claim nuisance because the farmland was already there. However, the farmland cannot enter into new practice of business and then not be held accountable. So it was very, very, specific, and I thought an excellent way of getting rid of any kind of manure transfer station in an area that is now already has not been considered manure transfer before yesterday.
What part of what they're doing is not environmentally friendly?
Well, so the manure, so it's a big tree farm. The manure is brought in, and they have a concrete slab. And I don't know if you live here. I mean, have you seen the winds lately? Right? It's not covered. It's not, there are no walls. It's blowing everywhere. And they go around with blowers and blow it at night so it looks clean, but it's disgusting. And then they bring the haulers and they shovel it up and then they dump it and it's all in the air. I mean, that's not for me a self-contained anything. And if you look at kind of trash and other waste processes, and if you look at companies that are actually really wanting to truly take on all kinds of waste, manure waste, whatever, they're self-contained buildings. They're buildings. So you want a manure transfer station, because I guarantee you they're making money. I mean, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Then put up the building. We'll provide the land, you put up the building, do a public-private partnership, or if this nursery wants to put up a building and spend the money because, they're going to be there forever, gosh golly, you go for it. We're full on supporting, but that's not what's going on here.
So you're saying that the manure is polluting the air?
I'm saying the manure is polluting everything. It's polluting the canals that are around. It's polluting the air. It's, it's everywhere.
Okay. So when they come to all the farms all over Wellington and they do the same thing.
So the difference is, in Wellington, when you come to all the farms, as Cindy Drake requires, I have walls and a structure that is covering all of this, and then it's moved.
The law is that it has to be covered by tarp, not a roof.
Okay, but many of the new buildings have roofs. I have a tarp, actually, but it's covered at all times, and there's doors, and it's four-sided, and, you know, it's a cube. This is completely open air with no cover.
No, Christian, and when they go to your farm, one truck comes, he picks up, and he leaves. In 10, 15 minutes, he's gone. Okay? But here, I went to the site, and it was the worst days of wind that we had, and I was on the neighbor that is to the west of it, on the first property there. We were standing on his paddock, looking at it, and you can see because it was one truck after the other, just like that.
Right.
I mean, bram, bram, and then the noise of the trucks and everything. He said, Carlos, this is in my backyard.
Right.
And it really was not correct, because it wasn't an enclosed property. It
Okay.
had the floor.
They have the permits from the state permitting them to do it, Michael?
No. The property is a nursery operation. There's no state
Exempt.
requirement for this. This is a nursery operation, and it's part of the ag transshipment approval for a use on the nursery property.
Okay.
As
As
part
an
of the
ag
nursery.
use?
As an ag use.
If they build a wall around it, would that help? Or is it too much?
No, but the owner already
So,
said,
so the operation is closed at this point. It's no longer functioning, which you know.
I actually did not know that.
Okay, it is not functioning.
Fantastic.
And I would like to also point that I have sent your memo to our legal counsel. The memo is dated 2006, 2007 from Pam Bondi. And I want to just note that, for the record, that there has been a couple of AGO reports since then, and also 604.5 is now in effect. So we're going to consider the magnitude of the letter that you gave me, but we're also going to have to take it into consideration to what 604.5 and all the other things that have come after that as well, because
Sure.
obviously the state statutes and the state legislature has taken the position of ag
Sure.
and tried to enforce, ag's position in this. So they haven't lessened the rules on ag. They've actually allowed ag to grow and prosper in this state, which is part of our culture here. So
What caused it to be shut down? What caused it to be shut down? Was it not economically viable, or was it shut down by
they made the
municipality
decision to shut it down.
for business reasons?
There was
Yes.
Or neighborhood reasons?
No, there was some turmoil with the internal people who owned the property. It was not anything to do with financial. It was actually financially, and no, my bill hasn't gone down either, but my bill also has not gone up.
No, I'm just,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
but 30% there,
But
went down, so.
To use the example that Michael used at several previous meetings, there was an illegal one in Loxahatchee that operated this way, and when they went in and looked at the numbers, et cetera, it was a very successful way of doing it, much better than what they're doing now. So, looking long-term, I mean, my manure bill has quadrupled since I've lived here, and will
Same here.
continue, and it's going to go even higher, to the point that, you're going to have to charge people more for the manure removal than for their stall.
Right.
So this is a very viable economic operation. There was just some internal personal turmoil that caused them to temporarily
Okay.
shut down.
Got it. Do you think it's going to start back up in that location?
From what I heard through the rumor
Right.
mill, not
Right.
to be substantiated, they were going to try to open it back up.
Which just goes back to our need as a community, and to the degree that we can facilitate it as a committee, to find a more viable, longer-term solution.
Well, and just to complete the context of all this, there's another permitted site down the street, actually on 50th south of the Horseshoe.
Is that Bellissimo?
Yes, and it has,
Yeah.
there's nothing happened there, but there's a site that's permitted, ready to go.
Permitted for transfer?
Special, but it's a special use permit for 6 months. It's
Yeah.
not a permitted, it's not a permanent site. It's a special use site, because there's no other activities on the property. There's nothing else there.
Yeah.
So the
50th Street
special-
and where?
50th Street and
South
Owsley
Road.
Farms
that's
Road.
what the trailers are parked and the cows are parked
South of the Horseshoe.
Got it.
on.
Right on the
the-
curve of 50th Street.
Yep.
Owsley Farms Road is the next road over, so that would be the intersection.
Now, Mike, The same person has not finished the construction of Lake Worth Road, as we discussed before. The same person has not finished building the ring in field number 2 in Palm Beach Polo and International Polo Club. And I wouldn't give him a permit until he finished the existing permits, which are open.
I'm not sure I understand about the field, but the intersection improvements, the roadway improvements,
Right, he went all the way in 40th, but he hasn't done the part inside that has to be paved to how do you call that street? I wrote it here.
South Road.
The back
Cressida?
way to the horse show.
Cressida.
The back road hasn't been done.
And I said earlier that he had, I believe, I don't know the exact status of that, but he did come in for a permit, and we had some kind of plating issue that I think we got resolved with him. But as you can see, this is the season, and I don't know that it's going to be
Right.
built this season.
And then last year, he also opened a permit to do the sand ring on field number 2. And the ring is there, the plastic fence is around it to protect it, the lights are there, and that's it.
And that's the permit that he applied for, and he completed that work, as I understand it.
Right, it hasn't been completed.
From our perspective, it has been completed. He did the required improvements that he showed us, the
But
temporary
there's
improvements.
no bleachers, there's no...
They're there now.
They're there now?
They came
Yeah,
down
they're
from
using
Tryon.
temporary.
They're all
bleachers, so
temporary.
They're there now, and
There
they're
was no
going up.
permanent bleachers permitted for that site. They were all temporary.
I back up.
And the roadway improvements that you noted, each time the state of Florida declares an emergency, the developers get an extension. That's state statutes.
Okay. Can I...
Yes, so I know we're still on person number 1, but person number 1 is going through the whole list, so we're covering everything, so, yes.
Okay.
We'll take and we're going to take a break at some point.
Should we entertain the World Equestrian Games?
I want to correct you right now, please, because you keep talking to me.
Well,
The committee. I want to just make sure you're aware that the
I'm talking
committee.
to you because here it says Mike Odell is the one that prepared this.
No, I put
no,
it.
we
Well,
did.
Paul
you're
Scofield,
correct.
and Paul Scofield sent it to...
You are correct. On your behalf as a committee, you prepared
No, we did this.
That's from years of committee work.
Okay, so then who should I address? To
All of
Jane?
us.
Well, I
All
mean,
of
this
us.
is the committee.
All of us.
You're addressing
Okay.
to me, Carlos, but I want you to understand your committee members here are who you're working with. I mean,
Okay, I'm sorry.
this is
I'm
a
sorry,
team
Mike.
effort.
I was,
Yeah, it's
I was
exactly.
referring-
Thank you, Bob.
I
It's a
was
team
referring-
effort.
I am sorry. I apologize. I look this way. No, you're right. You're right. Okay. It says in our study that do we want the World Equestrian Games here? I would say no to the full Equestrian Games, but I will say yes to the venues that we have. We have jumping, we have dressage, we have hunters. We are not prepared for the steeplechase. We're not prepared for the other ones. So I will accept the World Games, part of them, what we can accomplish without going outside of what we have.
I read actually, and I don't know if this is true, that after Tryon, that they're actually looking at splitting it up more and not having it all.
Correct.
Because there's not many people in the world that will step up and actually can do that. And,
Correct.
And Tryon, I mean, they had to do it in 2 years because Canada,
Fell through.
fell through. So now they're talking about maybe splitting it up, and
Correct.
not having it all in one anyway. So-
That's why I was saying that we could accept what we can handle, but not the whole games. Okay. Then, what do we mean by short-term lodging for tourism? What is
Hotels.
short-term
Hotels.
lodging? The RVs?
Hotels.
Hotels.
Okay. You know that we can put a hotel in the mall and we can go to 20 stories high if we go to the mall. If you do the hotel in IPC, it can only be 3 stories high.
Well, it can't be anything until.
I know, but this tells me that we're pushing, that the study is.
Let me give you some context on that, because we have to be careful with our language on that. There was conversation about that constitutes a new land use in the preserve, and that is something that we've talked about needs to be considered at a higher level. If we look at the equestrian preserve, do we need to consider an additional land use, that being lodging? Forget about any appeal we might have coming our way, but should lodging be included in the preserve? And also keep in mind we had a referendum on this issue, but it's there because it's the appeal is out there, and so rather than be reactive to an appeal, let's be proactive and think, does the preserve need lodging?
Okay.
The way I was thinking about it was we as a community need more lodging in order to accommodate the growth of the equestrian brand. And then to me, the issue is put that lodging in the place that's right for it, which today, without any changes to the rules, it would be in the in the mall.
Right,
The
outside
mall.
the preserve.
It would be outside the equestrian preserve.
Right.
And that'd be the first place to look, like the new Marriott that went in there, Marriott.
Fairfield.
Fairfield.
Right.
Yeah,
So there are
which-
2 hotels.
Now we have 2, and we probably need.
There's another entitled site too, ready to go, and that's just north of the Taqueria lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is
And that's perfect.
Without a change of use.
Close.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
perfect
Close.
spot.
And not in the preserve. Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's look at something else. I think we're going to overbuild on hotels that can't exist on 6 months of the year. But if you did have some kind of a resort-type place, and I'm not saying where, I don't know where that would go, but I think it has to be tied in with the tourism deal and made a resort, so you can use it year-round instead of just a standard motel in a mall.
Right. And I don't think we need to change any zoning for that. I think there's plenty of space.
Right.
turn Wanderers into a beautiful hotel. That was a joke.
But for a hotel to survive during the summer months, it has to be on a place where there's traffic.
Well, unless we got things going in the horse community during the summer, which
Year-round.
is what we talked about earlier.
Right.
If we could get other things in here during the summer, I enjoy it here in the summer. I wish more people
I do
would
too.
come in
I do
here.
too.
I think that every year we have more people staying
Yeah.
and more horses during the summer. I do think that. The place that is approved is the corner of South Shore and
North of Taqueria, that's what I'm saying.
north of the Taqueria. That's approved.
Yeah.
But it's in the middle of Wellington. You're only going to stay there if you are in Wellington.
Right.
If you're driving,
But if you were a horse person and you had activities across the street,
It's perfect.
what's wrong with that?
there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, I think
I'm trying to make it survive the whole year. And
I don't think all these other motels are going to survive.
Well, what I think you rightfully said, it's like, what are we trying to create? Are we trying to create rooms, i.e. just a hotel, or are we trying to create a resort, like a breakers kind of, so to speak, you know what I mean? And there's a big difference between if you just want room volume or if you want lifestyles with rooms. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're going back to tourism, like, oh wow, there's this new like great Relais Chateau in Wellington and with a golf course, and you should go check it out. Well, no, seriously, right? So it goes to the tourism line versus I'm in Wellington, I need a hotel room because I don't feel like doing Airbnb or whatever it is.
Palm Beach Polo has room for it too, but it won't happen.
Right.
If you remember from the discussions you had with the venue operators, I believe it was Mr. Gansey who brought that up to you all as one of the options, where he talked about the sports tourism and providing for people to come in and learn how to play polo. They were here for a week or two or whatever it is, and that would be something that, and I guess in his program, he's looking at a kind of a year-round type operation, which would be something, I guess, akin to the resort or something to that effect. So to the point you're making, Bob, I guess, the resort kind of concept of coupling that with some kind of activity associated with what Mr. Gansey was talking about would be something that would be supported through a hotel operation or something like that.
I just can't see many people around the country saying, oh, I'm going to go down and stay at the mall in Wellington for 2
Exactly.
weeks or a month this summer.
Right.
But it is the kind of thing that we could have our tourism board pursue, because they're the ones, you know, I'm being a little facetious, but to the degree that we're the adjunct to that tourism board, let the hotel operators who have that expertise figure out how to capitalize on the opportunity. But until somebody makes them aware of it, we're not even in the game. So the key is put it in front of them. You know, whether it becomes the resort or whether it's another kind of an alternative that still accommodates the need we have in the current season for more short-term housing, so people can stay here for the venues, whether they're spectators or competitors.
One minor correction, Carlos, the maximum height on State Road 7 is 72 feet, not 20 stories. I don't need to see that one, so.
Well, I understand that somebody talked to Mr. Schofield, and he said that he will push to, if they build a hotel in the mall, to 20 feet, 20 stories.
Wow.
I heard that before.
How many feet is one story?
12?
10 to 12
Yeah.
feet.
10 to 12?
Wow.
I mean, I know that west of the turnpike is 3 stories. That's a hospital, 3 stories high.
Now, the actual hospital is looking at they're doing 5 stories. They have another, I think they have another floor that they can add to the hospital yet.
Okay.
But 72 feet is in our code
Yeah.
right now.
Are they putting something where Surrey West is now?
There
Condos
is an application going
or a
through.
hotel, or do you know
No,
what it is?
condos.
Condo, okay.
Oh, wow. They're turning it, Neil's doing that, turning it into that?
I believe he's the applicant, yes.
Back to Carlos, or do you have anything else on your list?
I'm sorry?
Do you have anything else on your list?
I think that the only thing that I still need to do is that, yes, I okay the RVs.
We talked a lot about that with the updating of zoning.
Right.
Do you all, we need to keep going around the room. We've covered a lot of ground.
I
and
only
this
have
is
2.
super productive. Does anybody need a break?
No.
Break, no break. Okay, Annabelle.
I'm easy. Manure's number 1 on my list. 100% number 1 on my list. Number 2, I think there needs to be a traffic light at Lake Worth Road and 120th. I think that, especially during season, it's just out of control. You're asking for, something to go wrong.
I second that.
Yeah. And it's not even like a Sunday polo thing. It's like even getting here today. It's
dangerous.
It's dangerous.
No, between
Especially-
the school,
And at night, and it's just
Yeah.
between, and the school's right there too.
Right.
I mean,
School is right there,
it's
so
dumb.
Right.
Especially turning left.
Turning left, going across, straight across. I
know,
mean,
it's
it's
hard.
Scary.
And then sometimes it's trailers, and it's dangerous.
Good idea.
And then secondly, I'd like to see on 50th Street, we have a wonderful trail system. The trail system kind of breaks apart a little bit between South Shore on 50th Street and when you get to, I think it's 140th Street, there's like that where the nursery is, right? And there's a canal on one side and there's
Right,
whatever. And it's a lot of horse traffic, and I've seen a lot of not pretty things go on, and because the speed limit's not enforced there, and everything from dump trucks and this, and I don't mean even manure trucks, I mean like sand or this or whatever. I would love to see just like you have going down South Shore, I would love to see a barrier like a slat fence kind of just in that area, so that
We have the
for
room for
safety
it?
for
on
horses.
the north side of 50th.
On the north side of the
We do
street.
not have a bridle path on the north side of 50th Street.
No, but people use it as people just use the grassed area there in between which is between the road and the nursery land. So they use it as such anyway, because you kind of have to, in order for the bridle trail to continue. And so there is no technical bridle trail, but there's horses that just use it as such all the time. And so it would just be nice if there could be some kind of barrier fence between the road and that.
It's the only exit when you come out of South Shore, south of 50th. That's the only way you can go with a horse. If you're riding a horse, you cannot go on the south side. And
Or if you're going
west,
west, you have the beautiful trails that have been done. You're right, you have that
They're on the
dirt
south-
road that
on the
then
south
goes
side.
onto the
Next to the Wellington
preserve.
Preserve.
Right, but you
But
have
if
the
you go
dirt
e-
road,
if
and
you go
there's
west-
nothing for one block if you go west. So,
Again, this is one of those scenarios where we have these all over. This is one piece of the bridle track system that is privately, it's not a bridle path, it's a privately owned property. And so the village can't install anything on private property.
oh, that I totally get. I just thought that, I don't know, so does the private property go into the road? Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Then I only have
Yeah,
two issues.
yeah.
No, but there's only two owners there.
Well, right, there's one who's selling, so maybe
Yeah,
we
we
could,
can-
Right, so
talk to
when,
them.
so when property comes in for development, and I have my bridle path master plan.
We can
that
ask
look at,
nicely?
We ask for it now,
okay.
okay? And so, and I don't know if you heard, just as a, I'm going to toot my horn for just 1 second here, but we were successful working with Mr. Sword, Dr. Swardlin this year, and we were able to get the south side of Pearson Road from South Shore to his property there. That is now a bridle path. We have an easement over that property now, so the village can maintain that. So when that's something we've been working on for 3+ years.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that I would offer mine, except for the fact that mine's a canal, so that doesn't work.
Right.
That
So,
whole
and
other
we
side
have
is a
other
canal.
properties, other private properties that I've been working on for a long time as well. So, you know, I will try and we'll continue to work to improve. But right now, where we are with the bridle path, for the most part, is that we have a plan that we're implementing to improve the pathways as necessary. And then we have this list of privately owned ones that we're trying to get easements on, or the right-of-way. If people don't want the liability, then obviously the only way we, the village, can identify them is if we own it.
And huge progress this year in getting that stretch of Pearson from the horse show to Athley. Big progress.
Well, that is not, I'm going to reiterate, that is not the Village of Wellington's bridle path. It belongs
Grand
to
Prix Village.
Grand Prix Village.
But at least you got it done.
We received a cooperative nudging from us, but they helped and did what they needed to do. So I appreciate what they did.
Yep, good. Rachel.
Actually, I'll be easier than Annabelle. We covered pretty much everything that I went through. My two biggest things would be the safety at South Shore and Pearson with the horse crossing. I think that's going to be really helped out when there's the extension from Lake Worth Road into WEF, and that's going to be solve a really big problem of traffic and safety. And then also reiterating that the EPA zoning needs to stay EPA and preserve as much as possible. So those are kind of my big points, but you addressed pretty much everything.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Carlos, you did a great job covering it. Thank you for putting in the time.
I'm sorry I was the first one.
No, I'm glad you were.
Exactly, me too.
But it's hard for me to determine which is more important, the roads or the manure. They both need to be worked on right away. That light at 120th is great, and widening Lake Worth and Pearson, or not Pearson, South Shore, I think should be done. But the thing that interests me most is the tourism aspect. I think we can really make an impact with that, and I think we should work on that as much as we can.
I agree.
And then I do have one thing with the gray water. The abandoned golf courses in Palm Beach Polo need the water because the weeds are starting to dry up.
Is there something?
Outside the, can I answer that? We're just saying it's outside the EPA. I mean,
It is. That's true.
There's
Now,
some-
That's an Andrew Carduner issue, I believe. Yeah.
And I'm on that same board.
Bob, is there anything that we can do to mow the golf courses?
You're not allowed to own them. You're not, they're driven on every day to run people off if they're walking a dog or anything. No one's allowed to touch them.
Is that Glenn that does, or?
That was addressed at the village council meeting Tuesday night.
yes, there's the council addressed some of that on Tuesday night. So.
But I know that if in our area, if we see a property that is not being taken care of and we complain, the same notices says you got to mow, you got to clean your fence, you got to.
Some people listen to those orders.
Well, no, I know that we're talking to the wall, but but I hate. I mean, I go inside and I sell property there, and when people say, Carlos, you sold me this house this last year with that beautiful view. You knew that was going to happen. I said, look.
No, nobody knows.
No, but it's we have to do something about it because the prices and the image of Palm Beach Polo is going down.
All of that is out of the preserve, so I'm going to keep
Okay,
this
I'm
moving.
sorry.
Sorry I brought
Christy,
it up.
that's all right. Christy?
My biggest thing was I wanted that we finish the work on the zoning laws that we started. I think we worked really hard on it, and I'd like to see that all passed in writing, and I think it'll
I
make-
thought that was passed.
No, well, before you got here, the last piece is the biggest piece is section 6.
Right.
Section 6.10, which
Yeah.
is the preserve zoning, is going to be sent to the new members because they haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
And then it comes back to us before it goes to the council.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of those changes that we made in there were very
And we need to make sure that they're there on the
they're
final
there,
version.
type of
Yeah.
thing. And then my second thing was just because people always mention the bridle trails. I mean, that's, part of keeping Wellington, that we continue to work on improving all of those.
And on that, I know we were discouraged as a group of taking a field trip on the trails, but I encourage all of us, like we all make manure, we all have horses, to get out and check out those trails. We don't ride them regularly. You and I don't ride them.
Can you send out a map of those trails? Sorry, now,
Yeah.
can you send?
Actually, you've got it. You've got it in your book.
It's in
You've got it in your book.
Yeah.
It's in here,
Which map is it?
Yeah.
right here.
Oh, God, okay.
These are, those are the trails.
Can you send out a map for dummies version?
Ryan.
I'll send something.
Okay, thank you.
This map number 3 represents all the trails in the village of Wellington.
Right, that's not the map for dummies
And,
version.
and the other is, I don't know about all of you all, but what we heard at that meeting in November is, from me, I may go out there on a Sunday because I want to see what it's like on a Sunday afternoon after the horse show with the trash and the people and everything we heard. So,
Going on a horse or on a golf cart?
horse. Yeah, I don't know. I get the whole experience. I walked the millings with my bare feet, but I don't think that counts.
I'm going
Four-wheeler.
to take the scooter, the loud one.
Okay.
And manure, but that's been beaten like a dead horse.
Yep. Glenn?
So beyond everything we've already talked, which I think is all, the right issues, I've got a lot of heart for the tourism piece, but I would frame that as building the Wellington brand. I mean, my business background is brands and branding, and I think what we have here is really extraordinarily special, and that there's an opportunity to build it. We talked a little bit about just building it within Wellington, the equestrian versus the other non-equestrian part of Wellington, but I think there's an opportunity to build it more broadly around the United States and even around the world, to the degree that our goal is to continue to attract people to come in and compete in our various venues, to buy property in our community, and that's really the lifeblood of what we're trying to do. So I've got a lot of heart for that one.
And we have a lot of competition coming our way.
Yeah, we
so
sure do.
now is the most important time. We've got competition even overseas.
Exactly.
So
Well, and what my mind goes to pretty fast is we can only do so much as a committee, and our charge is really not tourism, it's land use, but there is not a tourism board or a tourism staff. And do we want to head the direction towards recommendation of something like that?
Or at least to keep it within the confines of our mission, to build the Wellington Equestrian brand. You know, that I think we can certainly tackle. We probably need some more resources that maybe Ryan and Michael could help us with. But, you know, that's certainly one that I think would be a great place to start. I mean, I think you're right. It's bigger than the equestrian piece, but if we could just use the equestrian piece as a first step, then I think the other parts would naturally want to follow.
I would argue that there's nobody better to tackle Wellington tourism, since the only tourism is horses, than the Equestrian Preserve Committee, you know, because you just have to remove the preserve and then it's Equestrian Committee, and we all know the horse aspect
where I'm
of it.
headed is we get a lot of support from the staff.
Tremendous.
And tremendous amount. And what you're talking about could be so exciting. There's so many things can be done, but these two can't do it because they've got their hands full of planning. So do we want to, in our heads, be thinking a year or 2 years from now, we want a tourism staff person to help us with this?
Well, there's that, and then there's like, I mean, obviously there are these sunshine laws and things like that, but maybe maybe this falls outside kind of the sunshine laws, because it's not really like we're not trying to legislate or this or pass, you know, anything, that maybe we could create a subcommittee of this, of the same people on here, that is truly just about tourism, that doesn't require the resources of the staff, and then, you know, whatever we present kind of like, you know, there's one person that presents to the committee on a monthly basis or whatever, a quarterly basis or whatever, you know, with everybody on air, that's part of the, does that make sense?
That'd be fantastic. If you all are up for that, that's some work. That would be fantastic.
I think that would be kind of a fun challenge.
Yeah.
I have interject a couple of things for you. So another thing to add to this would be you have the Palm Beach County Sports Commission. George Lindley has been a great partner for us out here at the Village. George has brought a lot of events that we've had off-season that use our fields and things like that for sports tourism. So George would be one entity that in his organization that you might want to look at. And then of course, the county sports, the county tourism board is another one as well. Those, again, those are resources.
Yeah.
You may see things a little bit differently or some methodology, but at least there's some resources.
Maybe you could ask Lori if that would be allowed if we met as a subcommittee that was not doing any kind of
No legislation.
stuff.
I'm not sure.
Sunshine law.
With the
No, I understand it, but I'm just, what do you mean by a subcommittee?
Well, not like a sub, like a group,
subcommittee.
our own kind of group off whatever that was focused on that, but
Yeah.
is not dealing
Yeah.
with any.
And let's perhaps think about
And
it in
then,
terms
and
of
Glenn, you can
Wellington.
come up with our slogan.
There you go.
That's what we need. Yeah.
So the group would be a Wellington Equestrian brand group, brand building.
Okay.
And I mean, to me, the mission for that would be, who's our target audience? What's the message, right? How are we positioning the Wellington Equestrian brand? And what's the best way to get that message out to the intended target? It's three things.
So what if we started Glenn by introducing you to George, if you don't know who he is?
That'd be great.
And I'll set that meeting up for you, and we can begin that process.
That'd be fantastic.
Can I come?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So
Love
I
that.
was really excited about you taking on manure, but if you take on tourism, you're going to get wiped out. So
So you're asking for another volunteer from Manure?
yes. Thank you for clarifying that. And maybe that's not the way to go, but I so am excited about you taking on this on, because you've got so much expertise to bring to this, and we so need it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Do you have more on your list?
Well, just to give a tiny little bit of context, peek under the tent. So we started off the meeting by talking about some of the metrics what's going on with the venues. I call that, I try to relate it back to the consumer brand world, and I call that, the category. In this case, the broad category would be the equestrian category. And we said we wanted to understand, where are we growing and how fast, and how's that compared to, the country as a whole. But some of the other pieces I'd love to know about would be our consumer. So that would be the key constituents, the players, the competitors, the people who are using the venue, and what's working, what's not working. How do we make sure that that we really understand who our key kind of consumer is, our key user of these venues, and how well we're satisfying their need or not. Christy, to your point, the competitors. So we're seeing an emerging competitive set, Ocala being a great example. Who are the competitors? What do we expect to the future from them? And what are their strengths, their weaknesses? Kind of what's our competitive point of difference?
Michael, how long ago was that study where we stood outside the venues and had people fill out stuff? Would that be relevant still?
12 to 11, 12. I think we did it the 11, 12 season.
We have like these questionnaires where we ask people
really?
coming.
Cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And
I will say to our credit, so I ran into one of the top trainers in the country at the ring when we were watching my daughter last weekend, and he's from Ocala. He has his horse farm in Ocala, and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He's like, and he's literally said, he's like, "Oh, no, I come to Wellington now for the season. This has started, I guess, last year."
Wow.
And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Because if I want to make any money, the money to be made is all here." So in terms of whatever Ocala is building, it's in his backyard, and he's still coming here. So that I shouldn't say we shouldn't rest on our laurels, but I think we could take a deep breath. If that
well, yeah,
makes
I mean,
sense.
you'll never compare Ocala to there
Exactly.
because we have the breakers, we have everything else.
No, I don't mean that. I just meant the horse show.
Yeah.
He was just talking horses.
Right, but we don't know like what kind of prize money they're going to offer or anything like that. And if they start offering good prize money, Ocala's only, I drive fast, 3.5 hours away. So if somebody wants to go up there for the weekend and do a CDI because the prize money's better, we're going to lose out. So
Well, they already do that for the million, right? I mean, they do that once a year for the million.
So that's just once a year, but that's going to get a lot bigger than that.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know more about the competitors, but I'd also love to know more about the folks like the trainer you're talking about and why he or she decided to come here
Right.
versus Ocala. What's the attraction? So how do we really amplify
The
this?
clientele
Yeah,
that has
Yeah,
the money.
you don't have the clientele
Yeah.
up there yet. And
exactly.
I emphasize
Yet.
yet.
Because they're not done building
They're
it.
not done yet.
Young
Yeah, but it's
riders
also
go-
it's also, I mean, in fairness, it's also 3.5 hours north. It's cold.
Yeah.
The ground freezes. Like,
wet.
it's wet. I mean, it's not the same conditions for the horses. So when you're coming down from the north to enjoy, good footing and all these other things, and not like the frozen indoor ring, that's another reason. I mean, I used to do Ocala when I was like 12, and that, I mean, a lot's changed in terms of development, but the climate hasn't changed.
Right.
So I mean, that's the one thing you'll I don't care what you build, like you still have that issue.
So that's
We have a
We
unique,
also have a. it's
we have a
really indoor
unique
air
location here in Wellington. We are an hour and a half from Miami.
Yeah.
We are 30 minutes from the Palm Beach Airport. We are 30 minutes from the ocean.
Direct flight.
We can fly anywhere we want to. We are 30 minutes from the Okeechobee Lake if they want to go fishing or.
You just made our
fun.
pamphlet.
I'm sorry.
That's exactly what you
You're
did. That's-
hired,
that's
Carlos.
That's exactly
No,
what-
but I mean-
That's exactly the points that we need to bring out.
Wellington is a place that you
Yeah.
want to come and live, and you don't want to leave.
Yeah.
You don't want to. And I have friends from Miami that they come and say, "Wow, Carlos,
I
this is
know.
amazing."
Yep.
Right.
I can't stand Miami anymore. Miami is such, everybody rushing here, rushing there. We're late everywhere we go. Here is relaxed atmosphere.
right.
It's a competitive ambient, but it's everybody's friendly, and it's different.
It's special.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
We have a location. I think Billy Lusaka, when he came here, saw what we had. And we have to preserve it, and that's why this is why we're meeting. We got to preserve what we have and make it better.
Maintain it and enhance it.
Make it better for the next people that come.
Because we know.
This year, like Annabelle was saying, we got more teams in the polo competition than last year. We want next year to have 2 more teams, still coming, and we will if we continue, the way we're going.
Right.
Okay. Keep an eye on the clock. I'm last.
We saved the best for last.
No, I'm trying to keep us organized here. I am so thrilled that you all have picked up on the state of the industry and the tourism and the marketing. I'm very, very excited about that. On my list that got incorporated into this plan was the planning study, and we tackled that tonight by talking about the need for hotels or not, and where that should be, and we may not need outside expertise for that. We may need inside expertise, but I think we ought to keep looking at those issues from a proactive point of view rather than reactive. This meeting has been absolutely fantastic, and I hope we have more of these to talk, because I think this group right here has got a lot of very intelligent input on topics like that. My idea for an Equestrian Preserve Association, this committee is probably as good as it's ever been as far as being representative of the total equestrian community. When I look around the table, we've got it all covered, which we didn't used to. But we need to make sure and feel like we can reach out to all the property owners in the preserve, and they can also reach out to us. And we're representing them well because they know what we're doing, and vice versa. You had the fantastic idea of having that open meeting last year in March, and I would love to see us do that again. Maybe we do that every year. We could do it. We could do it. If we do it, it needs to be February or March before everybody leaves. So I don't know what you all think about that, if you want to do that again.
And it's very important, Jane, that we let the property owners know that we have in the meeting for them to come with enough time.
Okay.
And, I think, like you say, we have to do it February or March.
Yeah.
So
In April, everybody's thinking that the final,
y'all
we
pick
got to
one.
go.
When do you want to do it? February or March? We can decide.
Well, what month did we do it last year?
March.
March? Beginning of March?
At the same time as our regular meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
March?
March, it's too,
March is good.
February's going to be here before you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, we just loaded ourselves up with a bunch of work to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me try to summarize that. So we're going to have the open meeting in March. We have just tackled, this is what I've heard, so you all correct me if I'm wrong. Carlos, you and I are going to the education committee for the village to talk to them about taking some horses to the schools and doing a program where we educate the children.
Can we talk outside the office?
Yes.
Can I throw?
You want to come too?
Yeah, because I know a lot of the schools, my kids went to public schools, and we've kind of already done that, so
No,
I know
perfect.
some info.
Okay, you come with us.
Have people that can.
Yeah.
So we're having
great.
subcommittees. That's where this is headed. You 3 of us are on schools.
Doesn't your daughter go to the school here?
She goes to landings.
So our new tourism board is Annabelle, Bob, and Glenn, because you were going to talk to, you were going to work on that industry report.
Our
So that
our
all
branding.
feeds the branding group, is that group, and that leaves manure, which is you and me.
I'll
And you wanna
play
do that-
along
you
on
wanna
that
do
one
that too?
Yeah.
And Carlos,
Which one?
manure.
Manure, come on. Come on.
So we
I
have
like the tourism better.
we're
No,
all
but on the tourism,
Yeah.
if I may, on the new building, Ken Adams building, do they have an office available? Like, let's say that I'm, first time that I come into Wellington, go to Publix, and I ask, hey, where's the tourism office here? Where's the tourist office so I can get information?
Room EF.
Is there a place like that or not in Wellington? There's not a place that I
The
can.
chamber,
The Chamber on Southern Boulevard.
no, the Wellington Chamber.
let's not even go there.
But, I mean, that's the only place.
But within Wellington, no. But so maybe that's something we do want.
No, what I would like to have is a tourist office in the building
Front desk.
or the front desk that they,
Well, they could get the pamphlet that you just
yeah, we have
created, and
pamphlet,
and also
we got
the trail
schedules for
map.
the games, we got schedules for the
Trail
jumping.
map? Yeah. We have our own trail map that's for people.
I think
like a
Carlos
ski
needs to
trail
be
map.
on branding.
Yeah.
Carlos, we're all on all of it, really. It's just how much
And
everybody
I'm
wants to
willing
work.
To work on the manure issue as well.
So
I personally think manure is going to have to be a group thing.
I think it all is going to have to be a group thing. So maybe
Well,
we just.
Tourism, I think we're trying to create a subcommittee so we don't kind of overload these guys. Do you know what I mean? That's outside of maybe these meetings. But, I mean, but I think, I personally think manure,
Manure is very important.
Manure is all, you just said it. We all represent every area here and we're all part of the problem. I think we all have to tackle this.
All right, so let's keep manure front and center for 2019 for this committee.
I don't think I qualify. I'm
You
only
don't-
good with bull crap, not horse.
Okay, so this main committee, the main task is livestock waste removal, schools. The branding, we're going to start branching out, and any of us are welcome to join that. So, but you're going to take the lead on organizing
Yep.
that. Okay. Did I miss anything?
You wanted to get a study done on number of horses.
That's part of the branding.
Oh, I thought you wanted that for just economic purposes, separate from
Doesn't
that.
it feed into, it feeds into what he
Fine,
said, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Can we get that study from 2012 and see if any of that helps us?
Sure.
The results?
And it could be that we keep our next regular meeting is manure and the normal EPC stuff, but then we have a workshop in 2 weeks and tackle tourism. It's as much as you all are willing to come.
We don't have anything coming up?
Nope. Nope, we're free for the moment.
No, nobody's building anything? or nothing?
Nope.
It's unusual.
That's
I know,
right.
that's
We
why
have,
it's
I know, we
very
have an
quiet. I'm
opportunity.
scared.
Yeah, it is scary.
Well, but let's take advantage of it, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think this was a great meeting.
Okay, did anybody have anything else? Did I get everything right?
So we only have 3, is that what I'm understanding from this? Manure, tourism,
Schools.
Well, there's the light at 50th Street and the roads.
The roads, and the roads are somewhat waiting on what happens with the
okay, but
horse show
as
building.
far as the lighting on, as far as the.
The traffic light on
Traffic
50
lighting and all
50
that, we'll
On
push
Lake
that.
Worth and
That will
120.
go to our engineering department. I'll ask them to take a look at it
Okay.
and see what, if there's a warrant for that.
Okay.
Mike,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Shannon LaRocque's coming back too, to talk about the,
And I'll invite Shannon at some point and I will make note to her about,
The water person?
your
yes.
utility issues and things you want to see on that.
Mike, if they go forward with the expansion of Lake Worth and South Shore, it should be done between May 1st and
Off-season.
November
Yes.
1st.
Yes.
I mean, it should be done in that
If you
schedule.
don't know, so that you're all aware, your comprehensive plan under the Equestrian Preserve area prohibits the four-laning of any of the roads within the EPA. So the comp plan's got to change first. So it's not just go build a road. We have to change the comp plan,
Let's get the money for it too.
and then you have to get the money for it. So it's not happening. So I just want, as much as you all talked about
Okay,
it
so
tonight.
forget it.
Change
I
the comp
understand.
plan is a public hearing.
But no, we will be changing the comp plan for our LDRs. We will be doing all of that. So I just want you to understand that
Yeah.
the process will, in this discussion, has been had, and we've been talking about it, and we will come back to you with the schedule and the costs associated with it, and where we're getting the money, and when we can put it together, and so on and so forth.
But
But
it won't be done this year.
absolutely not. There's no money in the 2019 budget for
we have a
widening of
traffic
Lake
light?
Worth Road.
That seems.
I don't think so, no. There's no.
Ever?
No, I'm just saying. We've already, so you're aware, the budget occurs in October.
Oh, no, I didn't mean it
So
that way.
we've already budgeted
No,
for
I just-
2019.
I'm sorry, what I meant is how you described it. You need to do this, and this for widening roads.
Yes.
Totally understand. The same for traffic light, or is that just a study?
Well, the traffic light has to have a warrant. There has to be a need for it. So there has to be a proof of a need. And then once the study and the need is established, then they have to find the money for it. So it's a process, and we will go through all
That's
that.
less, but you don't have to do a changing of LDRs and
no,
whatever
no,
for that.
no,
Just-
no,
Right, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
But I would do the light before there's an accident,
Already been
because
there.
well, there was one already, but not, we don't want another one.
Yeah,
And I think Annabelle is right, that light is needed on 120th.
it's a good idea.
So some of
Anyway,
the-
Carlos, now you know where the roadblock is.
Oh, that's, no.
The bump and the roadblock.
Where the buck
We were at
stops.
such a high point.
The Pearson speed bump, they got bigger this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. I about lost it the first time I went over one.
You were speeding.
You can't do them at 70 anymore.
No.
Anything else?
No,
Nope.
this is
Okay,
good.
good. Thank you all very much. Meeting
Thank you.
adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for
Thank you.
listening to me all this time, and I should have been addressing them.
My name is Caden Erskine. I am in 8th grade and I'm 13 years old. What I've started to do to help Zulu women in Africa and animals near extinction is I buy crafts from poor Zulu women in Africa and I resell it, and everything that I make I donate to the rhinos. I picked rhinos because both my parents are South African, so it was just very close to home, so I thought that it would be a good one to do. Originally